See, I told you guys they were great. I used to be in band, so I love it. So yes, you guys can have your seats, take your seats. Come on, Captain. So if we have a couple of these seats in front, now is the time to come sit in the front. Don't be shy. It's a good one. My name is Ashley Floyd again, on rotation with NavalX, and this is our director of NavalX.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Oh.
A little bit louder. We could just switch microphones.
Oh, yeah. And just want to tell you guys some logistics for today. So we have co-ed bathrooms. So co-ed bathrooms mean we went European style. So they are male, female, and all the sexes can be in the bathroom. Please make sure you close the stalls behind you. Please wash your hands. As we understand, COVID is still very present. But because we have masks and vaccine, we're able to have this wonderful agility summit. There are refreshments outside. There are refreshments on the other side. There's soft drinks. There's coffee. Please, please, please take part and enjoy yourselves. Please have your badges on. This is how we know that people who are supposed to be here. We're taking it like super conference style. So, you know, they're really fancy. Don't let them go to waste. Make sure you guys get your badges. If you have any questions, there's many NavalX staff and TechBridge staff that'll be walking around that can help you guys out. We would like to welcome you guys. And again, over to our director.
Thank you. All right, is this better? Nope. Okay, how's that? Okay, good. All right, hey, welcome everybody. It's so great to see everybody here. I see a lot of familiar faces and even better, a lot of new faces. I'm Captain Ben Van Buskirk, Director of NavalX. I just wanted to give a few remarks to thank everyone for being here and talk a little bit about what we are as NavalX. For those who are not familiar with us, it's probably, like I said, for a lot of you, your first event here being associated with us, so I'll go a little bit over that. First, I want to thank, another big hand for the Marine Band. Thank you so much. And Steve Frey will talk a little bit more about our sponsors, but really we couldn't do this without the cooperation with all and the help from our sponsors. And of course, our PIA partners, Building Momentum and TPP. Thank you so much. Big hand for them that make all of this possible. And also I'll have to thank our leadership, of course, ASN, RDA, they're the ones who are our operational chain of command, and for the support from them. And the rest of the senior leaders you'll see throughout the week. And of course, Office of Naval Research and Dr. Rich Carlin, Code 36, who are our administrative chain of command. Thank you so much for the support for NavalX. All right, so but before I go into who we are, I just want to tell a quick story on why this is so important. I was a SecDef Executive Fellow, which was a fantastic program where I spent a year working with industry. So I got to spend a year and change out in my hometown of Silicon Valley with a company called VMware. And we used to do these offsites where we'd work with industry, academia, and DoD, and go and just do these visits and talk about the technology or how they do things. And we were on our way back from a quantum computing company in Berkeley in a van. Once again, this mix of folks, sort of like we see here in this room. And it really hit us when we were talking about what makes innovation happen. And there are lots of definitions for innovation, but in the end, what it comes down to is the mating of diverse ideas. Right. And one of the biggest issues I've seen, and was very clear to me that we have in DoD, is so often we're challenged in getting with our partners in industry and academia and working together and talking about our problems. Or we need to build up this relationship. And that's really the key to winning. So events like this Agility Summit, that's what it's about. We call it a collision event, right? This is a place where, because of our PIA, we can come here, and I'll say this too, people that are not familiar with NavalX will ask you, are you a contracting shop? No, we don't do rapid contracting. We have partners in our ecosystem that do that, but we're not a contracting shop, which means, there are a lot of things we can talk about here in this space to work together and find better ways of doing things and share our problems and hear your perspectives. And that's critically important to us, because NavalX is an enabling function. All right, so what do I mean by this? When Secretary Gritch stood up NavalX a couple years ago, the idea was, how do we enable the Navy to be better? How do we break down silos and move faster? It wasn't about how do we make NavalX the best and gave NavalX a whole bunch of resources and do things. It's a fundamentally different approach. It's that how do we, with our small group of people, with our expanded ecosystem, make the Navy better? Because in the end, if you're going to do something, and I fundamentally believe this, and I learned this from talking to the best change agents and some of the most successful CEOs in America on how do they change and innovate and do things differently. And they said everyone wants to go in, and it was a CEO of a $1 trillion company. It said everyone wants to go in and do an innovation cell. All right. He's like, that's just being cool by association. If you really want to change, you have to change the core of who you are. All right. And so the idea of NavalX is we're not here to be great in Alexandria. The idea is we're going to work together and with our partners and with our leaders in the Navy who support us, go, here are fundamentally different ways that we can operate and influence the core of the Navy. It's the nature of what the Navy is, and I think it's the way ahead. So our mission is three-pronged. Okay, one is to help enable the naval workforce to deliver capability to the warfighter. The second is to be a platform for connecting, and the third is to change culture. So I'll go over a little bit of those. So enabling the delivery of capability. That goes a little bit into what I said before, and that we're not going to deliver the capability. We're going to partner with folks in the Navy, across the Navy, and part of that is through who we are as NavalX. I'm on detail from the OpNav staff. For those who aren't familiar, that's the CNO staff, okay? We have 2 active duty folks on full-time NavalX. We're both from OpNav, all right? The rest of our folks come from the R&D ecosystem, and they're here on detail. As in, I don't have any full-time billets. People aren't just put here. We are brought in by those parent organizations because they see the value in coming here. So we have folks, and please talk to your NavalXers and our tech bridge directors. We come from across the R&D ecosystem. We have a small team. We have 14 right now. But we gain power, and I think through our influence and through our network. Okay, so it's how do we enable the delivery of capability with the folks in the fleet and through our acquisition. And second is being a platform for connecting. I think this Agility Summit is a perfect example of that, is how do we connect these silos, both internal in the Navy. All right, we all know in DoD, we're bad about this. We tend to work in silos. There's a lot of reasons for that, but how can we break down silos with events like this? And then other events we do, and I know Whitney will talk about tech bridges, and throughout the week, you'll learn about our various lines of effort. All right, so a platform for connecting, and that's, I call it a social thing. It's not just a digital platform, okay? It is a social thing. It's about building relationships. The third is changing culture. How do we change the culture within the DoD? All right, I think it was Adam Grant had made it in congressional testimony that the DoD's culture is a threat to national security, all right? So what can we do to change culture? I think the way you change culture is by showing how you can do things differently and win and do them in a better way. And I think history has proven this. Everyone thought Elon Musk was crazy until the Falcon 9 worked. And then they're like, oh, okay, you've got something here. I think that's why you have the three-pronged approach. That's why we have it, is I think that we can prove it by doing things like this and proving that we can have better outcomes by doing things differently, then people will listen. So that's who we are. That's NavalX. I'm really looking forward to a great week. And I really thank everyone for being here. Sorry about the mask. It's the way we do things. And for everyone online, thank you for coming. Now what I'm going to do is hand it off to Whitney Tallarico, our Tech Bridge Director, who's going to go into some more details about Tech Bridge. So thank you all for being here.
Woo-hoo. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks again for coming. With an awesome mission like that to empower our workforce and to find ways to move faster, get problems solved cheaper, at scale. It's kind of exciting. Great mission to have coming into this organization. What I wanted to just discuss is that it's a very nebulous goal. I mean, we want to get better. What does that mean? How do we do that? And different organizations with different missions, but also different functions in organizations, HR, technology, just program management. I think the important thing about a place like this is we don't dictate how to do that. We let people come in with their ideas, pilot them here. And one of those ideas was Tech Bridges. And we kind of boiled down the NavalX mission into empowering our network to achieve national excellence. And what I really love about this team, so the folks who put this event together, the folks who are here to present to you, a ton of them are connected to our Tech Bridges. And what it is NavalX at scale. Within our first year, we had 6 Tech Bridges. And then it scaled up to 15 recently from Hawaii to London, and we're continuing to grow faster than sometimes I feel comfortable with. And I'm sure my team has suffered those growing pains as well. But the powerful message I want folks to think about while you're here is that we have all the tools, resources, talent we need to succeed. Technology is not usually that far off. It's usually the cultural barriers or the silos or the pockets that aren't getting light shed on them that are making it difficult for us to really go forward and faster. We also include our industry partners, our academic partners, nonprofit partners and other federal partners as teammates in this endeavor. This is not something we can do alone, and our problems are not easy to solve. I'm sure we all know this. So I really want you guys to think about the folks that are here. This is an event for you to share lessons learned, to really discuss, what may have worked here that we could tweak for different use cases. Rip off and deploy was Hondo Gertz's favorite R&D acronym. But I think that the important thing is you in this room probably have all of the talent, savvy, capability, resources to solve any problem that you have if you work together. And that's really what we want to focus on. How do we activate these agility cells? How do we really put things forward? And the fact that you guys are here shows that you're committed, that your organizations allowed you to come here, funded you to be here. So that's incredible in and of itself. I also think it's important to know we have members of the fleet here, the Marine Corps, civilians in all different walks, from the shipyards, from warfare centers, the Office of Naval Research. And, it takes a village. I was just talking about this before. It takes a village to I'm really excited to pass this over to Steve Frail, who will continue with the welcome.
I thought I was... I'm not a good speaker. Thanks, Whitney. I wrote notes, and then I thought I was up here to talk about the air conditioning. So we'll see if we can get it hotter in here so we can make everyone sweat. And we'll have a little weight loss or whatever else we need going on. Okay, so for today, I'll be running today's panel. There's a great panel. We have Intel Community, USMC, Marine Corps, Intel Community panelists that are going to join us and talk about how they take needs and take it all the way to a capability. So the panel is really to tie things together of what we're doing here. So oftentimes in my career, I've heard, oh, the acquisitions process is broke. It doesn't work. We need a whole change. And I've been doing this job for probably 18 years. So I've seen a lot with, and I started with Marine Corps Intel. But when we look at it, there's plenty of tools in our toolbox, per se, that help us do that. So when I hear rhetoric like, oh, the acquisition system is broke, we need changes to the acquisition system, and I think there's due for that, right? Certainly we have that challenge. However, it's all based on people, right? It comes down to people. It comes down to that frozen middle. It comes down to collaboration and communication. And that's also what this event is for, is collaboration and communication. I mean, we've got the sexiest thing I think we have out there, as I might say, is the NOC AD Fab Lab. So Terry's running that. So that was a collaboration. Hey, NOC AD, can you bring this up? Hey, Marines from Intel, can you come in and do a panel on how you go from a need in whatever climb and place you are, from the Marine Corps hymn earlier today. Hopefully us former Marines were all at attention during the Marine Corps hymn. We have cameras everywhere. No, just kidding. All right, so that's another thing too, right? We're here for collaboration, here to collaborate with each other and talk. And that's what it's about. That's how you can make a difference. Whether that difference is, I'm like 5'0" in height, but if I can get a 2 millimeter height difference, I'm all about it and I'm going to take advantage of it. So that's, I think, how we have to look at this, is even if it's the smallest bit of advantage that we can give to our Marines and sailors on the battlefield, or our DoD civil servants. How many, I know we all use either Scalata or ERP to put our time in, right? That's also a program of record. That's also part of our ecosystem of systems that we have going on. And I know how we all love ERP at times, right? So it's all about collaboration. How can we talk to the right people to get it done? NavalX is part of that. NavalX is part of the brokerage of that process. So when we look at NavalX, when you come here, you get some experts in the field who can, in the acquisitions field, who can vector you into the right person. We get it from small business all the time, or even a large, hey, I want to do this, this is what I want to do. But then we give them the telephone game, or that telephone tree. Hey, call this person, call this person. We want to stop that, right? We want to collaborate with each other, know what each other does, and then be able to push people to the right direction. So it comes down to that also is you know, I'm going to say it again, collaboration is hugely important. So when we're talking with folks, we want to send them in the right direction. We want to bring people to NavalX. NavalX is made up of rotationals. I think Nut talked about that. And we want rotationals here. The commands have to pay for them, that kind of stuff. You'll learn more about that this week. But most importantly, we're going to tie it together later on with the panel that talks about how they've done requirements within their ecosystem. How do they get important needs out to their intelligence Marines forward in the battle space? So I think that's almost after this, or we have maybe the keynote speaker. But I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Veach. So Roast, where you at? It's much bigger and better looking than I am. Roast, thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us, by the way. I am Lieutenant Craig Veach. I am the coordinator for the Agility Summit Challenge and also the NJOC Deputy Director, and we'll talk about that later on Thursday. You'll see that Thursday afternoon. But I've had the distinct pleasure and opportunity to be the coordination for this challenge. This year's challenge actually targets the Department of the Navy's Unmanned Campaign Plan and Framework, and specifically focus areas from this framework on operator experience, operator training, common data standards, and logistics support. We had over 200 members actively using and talking, communicating upon these challenges on this great application for sourcing ideas called IdeaScale. 25 new ideas in response to those challenge sets for those topic areas. 15 subject matter experts from all around the world came in to address and question, comment on these ideas, as well as assess and evaluate these ideas and give them a grade point on a five-point grading scale. The top 6 ideas from those 25 that were submitted over this 2-month kind of sprint, the top 6 ideas and their teams are here with you this week. They will be working together, getting ready and getting their pitches and presentations together, and they will be able to pitch live here on Friday morning our distinguished panelists for an opportunity to be crowned the challenge champions and get follow-on funding and also work for follow-on study, really, and funding to get closer to a prototype and closer to a piloting of that idea. So we're really excited about what Dr. Rich Carlin and his team at ONR Global. Thank you, Telerico, for helping us this whole trip, and also NavalX and Captain Van Busker. But yeah, so thank you for having us. Naval Junior Officer Council will be briefing on Thursday afternoon, and the entire Friday morning will be the pitch presentations for the challenge. So thank you for having us.
Awesome, thank you. And for those who haven't met Craig Veach, he's a rock star, and I can't wait for you guys to hear about the Naval Junior Officer Council, because he really took a challenge last year, ran with it, took it to a whole new level this year, and I'm excited to see what happens this week. Just in case you missed that, we've got 2 kind of things going on this week. We've got a challenge effort where we have members of the fleet and civilian force pitching to leadership on Friday for follow-on funding for problems that we sourced and crowdsourced feedback on. And it's pretty exciting. So definitely Friday's going to be fun. And we also have the workshops and the incredible lineup for you. But I stole the pleasure. I actually begged if I could introduce Rich Carlin because the speaker who's going to come up, Dr. Carlin, has been at the Office of Naval Research for a long time. But I think the important thing to know is he's an early adopter of innovation, and he's actually been leading in this field for a long time. And to me, when I first started as a contractor working for the Office of Naval Research before I became a Govy, he was one of those people who encouraged me to think differently and who encouraged other people to be honest with themselves about their problems, about the opportunities, and to really lead in different areas and follow their vision and execute their vision. And he provided top cover to do that. For a number of people that you'll hear a little bit about some of those programs today. But he's been one of the primary sponsors of NavalX, not just as a resource sponsor now in Code 36, but even before that, investing in projects for check bridges, investing in off-base facilities and staff in partnership with the Department of Navy SBIR program. Don't know where Bob Smith is, but we have some really dedicated sponsors here. Thank you, Bob, who believe in what we're doing here, and it's people like them who show true leadership by letting other people grow after them and supporting them in that process. So thank you for that for our team. And without any further ado, Rich.
Thanks, Whitney. Well, it's really good to be here. I haven't done a talk in front of people in so long. That's put my water up here in case I get thirsty. So it's really great to see everybody gathered here. I'm looking forward. I will be around pretty much most of the week. I got some things I got to take off, go do at the house where I have connectivity better, but that's another story. But what I wanted to do today a little bit was talk about some of the things we've been doing in the how we've been leveraging the private sector, particularly investments from the private sector. And before I jump into the actual slides, I want to make a comment about that too. Is that when you look at these, you're going to see I'm going to be talking about Alaska, Hawaii, these. But well, what's that got to do? Well, first of all, they're really important areas for us. But more importantly, think about this and how this can be applied, particularly for the Tech Bridge Network. Because what I'm going to be talking about, these are regional models that we've been working on for about a decade now, very successfully, and how we built these programs out. And in fact, it served as the model for the Tech Bridge. We were meeting with Secretary Gertz, bringing together education, research, and particularly commercialization, which is what I'll focus on today. When I talk about commercialization, I'm actually talking a lot about the private sector commercialization. DoD buying is a commercialization of that product as well. But what I'm trying to get at also is that how do we leverage that private sector investment to bring commercial technology to the fleet, the Marines, and make that happen? There are, before I forget to say it, there are groups standing by to invest money in defense. There's what's called the Defense Investor Network, multi-billion-dollar capability there. We're working with Silicon Valley Group with that over time. So there are people that are willing to invest, as what I'll talk about a little bit here. We've seen some investments from the purely private sector. There are people standing by to do exactly the same thing, even to commercialize for defense. Keep that in mind. And so as I talk about these, what I'll do is I'll get lost in my enthusiasm, because groups I've been working with over the last decade are just awesome people. And I'll make up points about that. Okay, so little history real quick. We were doing, this goes back actually almost 12 years, where we were making investments in the state of Hawaii. And you can probably guess why. We had a lot of congressional plus-ups to go out that way. If you're not familiar with the history of the Senate, you can go read about that in Wikipedia. But we started looking at this. We were funding universities, STEM efforts, and even standing up the first commercial business accelerator in the state of Hawaii. And so we looked at that. We said, we think about this not as individual efforts. We start rolling these together. We have this ecosystem that we can really move stuff forward with this idea that, go back. Sorry. Thank you. With this idea that if we work on education, literally we went into the K-12 community and all the way up through high school and even the community colleges with tech research and evaluation. That's our university system out there, a lot of money there. And very importantly, the technology commercialization. If you're going to do economic development for a state, it doesn't do good if you have STEM and research and technology. That's great for education, but how do you grow the economic development for the state? Which I guarantee you the members want to see. They want to see jobs and economic development. So I won't go into the history how we got that, but we established the first, like I said, the first accelerator in Hawaii. It's actually started in 2013. And I'll talk about it in a second. And the theme of this at the time was this is, if you read that, it sounds like the news today, by the way. So it's very relevant, think broadly, but it's also extremely relevant literally today, because where I say we're right back where we were the first year when Obama came in, except we're much further along. So we're jumping in much faster. So this literally was done. This slide hasn't changed in 10 years, by the way. So alternative energy research, technology development, education, clean tech workforce and clean tech companies. All right, so that's still continuing. And now let me jump in. I'm not going to talk about the university and the STEM activity. That's an hour-long talk if I get into those pieces of that. But let me jump into the technology commercialization piece. And keep in mind, how can this be leveraged in similar ways for our tech bridge networks? Next slide. And so, busy slide, but it's a couple of important pieces of this. So what we stood up was, it was originally called the Energy Accelerator, by the way, historically. And then over time, actually about 3 years ago, it teamed up with the Emerson Collective, which is Learning Powell's job network, for a company out in, we're an organization out there. So we rebranded it Elemental because it's not just energy, it's about sustainability and all these other efforts. So it built out. And if you look at this slide, I point down to, there's two key pieces to point out. At the bottom, again, this is started in 2013. They're starting their 10th cohort this year. You know how accelerators work. They do typically annual cohorts every year. Well, we put in about 43 million, and the investments going into those startups is now, actually exceeds that now. It's close to $4 billion. So we have literally leveraged almost 100x investments in these startups. We put a little money into the startups. Investors come in, about $100 for every dollar we put in. It's that's not defense money. I have to admit, when I show this to other investors, their jaw drops. They can't believe it. And why is that? Well, big piece of that is they're 24/7. They work very hard, but also they're very careful about picking those areas to invest in. When you look at what they do, they don't just, well, let's just open this thing up to whatever. They do a lot of market survey work. They look at the opportunity space, where the investors are interested in investing, make sure it fits into their portfolio desires. A lot of work goes up front to this. It's an annual process that runs continuously. And because of that, and they reach out, make all these different connections. Sorry, thanks. That they are able to tap into huge investments, piece of this. And very importantly, if you look at the people who are doing the investing, if you look at, these were the ones they added back in, this has been 2020 slide. They added Hitachi, National Grid, BP, nonprofit Net Zero, which is a huge company here. But also their investors are out of Japan, the Philippines, Thailand, New Zealand, Australia. And so you remember we call this Asia Pacific Technology Education Partnership? Well, it used to be called Program. We decided to quit that because most of the money is not my money anymore. It's other people's money. And so what we've been able to do through these investments is create partnerships literally globally across this. Bringing, and their new emphasis, I'll just encourage you to go to the website, is now, they've been doing this all along, but now they've totally branded it this way. It's climate and social equity. Those are the two key pieces of their portfolio. And in fact, they require any company applying to demonstrate how they have a social equity base built into their company. And they have certain criteria they set for that. Okay, so that was started in 2013. Actually, of course, we did the contracting back probably 2011. So of course, it takes a long time to do this kind of stuff. It originally was under a cooperative agreement. Now it's under an IDIQ, and we're looking at another model for their next round. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, thank you. And so I like to throw this up because, they talk about social equity, diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, and I'll say, this is the team. And people will go, wow, that's a diverse and inclusive team. Yes, it is totally. But even more importantly, I have the opportunity to interact with all these people over the years. They come and go, admittedly, but a lot of them stay on. They bring diversity of ideas, thinking, skill sets, background, and that's one of the main reasons they're very successful. It's that diversity and inclusion that's built out a truly awesome team. And very importantly, they have exactly the same beliefs and mission goals. They don't last long if they don't. I've seen a few kind of like, okay. And by the way, they are open for new jobs now. I'll talk about that in a second, where the job opportunities are. So they're always hiring. They're actually going to be growing quite a bit in a bit shortly. Anyway, so I point that out. And then what we did is, based on that success there, we started doing some work up in Alaska, saying, okay, I'm funding STEM, I'm funding research up there, and we met up with some people that wanted to build out one of the first accelerators in the state of Alaska. So we funded them, helped them kick off. This was about 3 years ago. It took them a little while to get their feet underneath them. Now they've raised, I think they have a $3 million private fund. Actually, I don't put the private funds in. They just got about $1 million from Economic Development Agency to build out an aviation institute in Anchorage, and $1 million from the Department of Energy for investment work. So what we're seeing is, and I only give them about $700K a year. So I'm already seeing a 5 to 6x payout on that, and that's only in 3 years. I will make a point here. Usually in the first 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, it's kind of a slower growth, but elemental, exponential. And they're totally on that path to do this. So I do encourage you to take a look at that, the Launch Alaska piece. And perhaps no surprise is that they're pretty important now for the other part of our climate change piece, which is called the Arctic. So in fact, everything we do up there is very focused on that Arctic philosophy. They are teamed up. I should point out, the Elemental Accelerator actually advised them on how to set up. So they have a very much similar model as Elemental Accelerator. And we have actually teamed them up in various ways. And that's been recognized by a lot of people, is that we are translating that model that we built out for Asia Pacific up to the Arctic. And in fact, this has a particular name called Arctic. It's the Alaska Regional Collaboration for Technology Innovation Commercialization. I love it, it confuses people, but that's good. All caps, different than, okay. And then in here, point out, I should have pointed out too, so that's all the groups. So Launch Alaska is the accelerator there. And we do have an innovation center at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and they actually have teamed up with Launch Alaska. So all of these people work very close together. And at one of our gatherings, we said, we've known each other for years up here in Alaska, but it wasn't until you helped to set up the Arctic that now we all work together for real. Next slide. And maybe more direct to defense side of this. So in Silicon Valley, the group that we work with called BM&T has, there was one of the co-founders was Steve Blank, who is the, basically the founder of startup philosophy in Silicon Valley with the lean startup and so forth. Joe Felter and Pete Newell set up what called BM&T. And one of those other people that they work with regularly is Steve Weinstein, who's actually a lot of success in Hollywood before he went up and joined up with them. And he's sort of the, I'll call him, he's the behind the scenes, gets everything done kind of person. So he and I worked together to set up an accelerator up in Silicon Valley with BM&T organization that now will support anybody in that. Thanks for Bob providing some dollars. They will now work with anybody with a phase 2 SBIR to go through a business accelerator for free. And they are open for anybody else as well. It is incorporated. We fund them specifically for that activity. So now we're starting to bring this philosophy, the startup, to the SBIR program, making it available to other people. And we're also looking at how we take this same, it's using HWorks Labs itself, by the way, and start using more of that for these companies that are coming out of, I'm going to my university programs, my other pieces of that, working with those companies that are actually spinning out of some of the work we do with universities. And of course, it's all tied back to H4HD. If you're not familiar with hacking for defense, I encourage you to take a look at that. And now, very timely for this, next slide, please. So last Wednesday, they announced what's called the Earthshot Ventures. And you have to watch the video of it when you go to the website here. Earthshot refers to the fact that when you're in space and you look down, it's the Earthshot. It's not the Earthshot, not the launch, it's okay. Which means that's our planet, that's our island. We need to take care of it. And what's really important there is that this is a new, they just closed the fund, so they'll have more funds than that. So their first fund now is a $60 million venture fund funded by Microsoft, a couple of billionaires, Emerson Collective, all these various people that offered $60 million focused on climate tech venture investments. It's actually a spin out of Element Accelerator. I actually don't put a penny into this. It's just a result of those investments that we have made with them to help them grow out that knowledge and the network that they built out that allowed them then to get these investors to pay attention and understand how good they are bringing in. And I want to point out one other piece of this is you'll recognize, so Dawn Lippert, she's the co-founder of Elemental, the CEO now, and the person on the lower right is Isaac Vandenberg, who happens to be the founder of Launch Alaska. So in fact, they've come together. It's pretty much an Elemental led, but Launch Alaska is a partner in that now. So we're making sure that all those investments we made in different locations are working together to create something which is, it's going to be game changing. There's no question about that. And it's actually probably, I think it's debatable, but I will certainly argue with him. It's the #1 business accelerator in the world, looking at climate tech combined with social equity. Okay. I'm way ahead of schedule. So I'm just going to open it up for questions, thoughts. Oh, come on. Yeah.
How are we planning on expanding with the community colleges? Tap into the Miramar.
Sorry, hold on.
Yeah.
Hi, Nino Marcantonio, DTIP. Thank you for having me here. I wanted to ask how we're planning on expanding our strategic partnerships and where the biggest goals globally. We're focusing on South Asia and probably South America in the central part, and of course, how's Africa being tapped into by NavalX?
Yeah. So, I mean, how do we expand internationally further? Yep. So, our model. I'm an old professor. Before I joined ONR, I was a professor, worked in the industry, and so forth. So, we find a university partner as a starting point. We try to find someone with that similar interest area. It happened that the first one was actually very successful in Thailand. It happened that we met the #1 renewable energy person at one university there. We helped them set up their first microgrid in Chiang Mai Rajabat University. We paid for that. We did the seed money for $500,000. He raised millions later, right, because of that. So that's kind of the way we go in to do that. Now, because we connected with the accelerator and the STEM as well. Now what we're also finding, though, is that because something we did down in Chile last year, which was, I love this model as well, is the Chilean Navy said, how can we tap into private sector funds? We don't have external R&D, turns out, unlike the US. And so I was meeting with Admiral Navajas, who was the lead, basically CNR's equivalent down there. And so I showed him our Hacking for Defense model, and he goes, done, we're moving on. So I spent the rest of the week talking to flag officers across the entire Chilean Navy. We kicked off a challenge. Thank you, ONR Global, for running that. ONR Global came in and helped us push that together with this idea that was those first investments into looking at private sector targeting, in their case, maritime security. And so this whole idea of this private sector investment, if you understand what's going on in that country, you can just tap into that. It doesn't mean you have to put a lot of money in. It's all seed money. But what it does is it's stimulating their investments, in this case Chile's, private sector, and the government, but not the defense, and the government's investments into their own commercialization opportunity. It's finding the right, truthfully, it's finding the right people.
A lot of people said that. So a couple of questions. So first, thanks for doing this. But so for intellectual property, like one of the things that one of the challenges that I see for things like cyber and stuff like that, where the government contracts for this kind of work, and there's a lot of intellectual property right protections. So where in the past some people may be hesitant as a result of being burned by those partnerships. So you engage a small business for the idea of innovation, for the flexibility, for all those things that are advantageous for doing that. But at times, intellectual property intellectual property from government labs or government resources or investments can be lost or compromised, not from a national security perspective, but compromised in the sense that we'll be billed for it later, multiple times over. So what is it in our format for going forward here, and the great things that NavalX is doing with these bridges and partnerships that help secure what we do in our own labs with the immense capability that we have, and not not want to hold that tight and prevent sharing it. So on that.
Yeah, one of my favorite topics, right? So I've dealt with this for the last several years. And I'll tell you what I think you have to do to kind of go down that path, but let me make one comment about particularly the Elemental and Launch Alaska. We specifically have focused them on the purely commercial path. There are some IP that gets, because they're under second government money, there is those issues related to that. Interestingly enough, on Launch Alaska, that's not true. We just fund the admin. None of our money goes to the companies. And people say, well, then we lose that. No, but I said, we're not going to go build weapons. We're not going to go build DoD systems. We're not going to do that with these areas. These are areas that you want to go buy the commercial product. Now, you'd have to worry about, the supply chain and so forth, make sure all those aspects are there, or maybe you don't use them for that. A lot of this, where we're looking at this, is some of the installation areas where you might not have to worry quite as much about the security piece of that. So that's opportunity space. But we don't want to impede the investors. We have had that. Investors are always concerned that the one they actually worried about the most was march-in rights. It says government can march in and take it. And I was asking lawyers, I don't think we've ever done that. I'm not even sure we did it during World War II, or any of these places. But the reality is that it is something to be aware of. Now, the solution, my opinion, is that, remember I started off saying, these are models how you can do this, but there are going to be those companies that are going to be more defense oriented. And there's going to be investors who understand those pieces of that. In fact, they probably want to protect that IP just as much as anybody else. And they want to make sure it's secured for the Defense Department. And so how do you, this is the big question, is how do you take these models, ensure they're still getting investments, external investments, while making sure they're secured? There's the Trusted Capital Group who's looking at that kind of area, where they vet the investors to make sure that the investors are coming in are clean from that. You can look at the companies, they can go through that process to make sure they are that area. Same time, you need that, where's that balance? So I would argue these are extreme. This is why they're private sector commercial. Well, I think when we get into the more defense accelerators, you're going to have to look more defense commercial side of that and make those investments. You probably aren't going to get that 100x. Typically, that's way outside the norm anyway. But anytime you can get those investors coming in and putting their dollars in, it really helps build that network out. And so, example that we're having discussions with is the Silicon Valley Defense Group, who has experience of that. And one of the NavalX Tech Bridge creators, Sam Gray, is there now. So he understands the problems that we're trying to address. So I know Whitney's been talking to him pretty regularly in terms of how can we perhaps use that as to create some kind of model here that still incentivizes investments, because we know there's investors out there that want to do this, protects the IP, ensures that that's happening, and how do you do that in an effective manner? And I have ideas on how to do that, but which is really total. The trick is total third party, and let the third party deal with that. And I tell you, the defense investors, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to want to protect the IP and ensure that adversaries don't have access to that technology. Otherwise, that technology is not worthwhile.
The second question is, so the government we have also with our labs and our technology. So one of the challenges we find is level funding labs across the board, right? So it takes a lot to keep labs going. They constantly have to seek other sources of funding to go lab to lab or program to program in order to be able to keep those labs going. So keep people fully employed and things like that. So so institutionally, when we look at these things, we go like, oh, well, we certainly want to partner with universities. We certainly want to build those bridges and that collaboration, which is really important to keep not only people interested in coming to work for us in the government, but also keeping us aware of the latest advances. But so for our labs, when we want to say, well, if we invest money outside to them, are we letting our labs atrophy? Are we risking, are we risking investing outside? And
right.
Certainly there are multiples, right? So you address, we invest 700,000, we get, $5-6 million back in terms of, or multiple $1 million back in private investment to things that are mutually beneficial. But so how do we keep our labs going? Maybe investment even back into our own infrastructure from the outside, so that multiplier comes and helps our labs, for the future. So how do we do that? Keep our labs going, keep our capability up organically, and still do these outside partnerships. And will any of that flow back, to our own organic capabilities, either in the form of direct or partnership work?
So let me see if I can. Coming in and out of my, let me see if so how do the labs play in all this in terms of their investments to ensure they're doing the right thing, right? And
that plus he's asking about the workforce.
Yes.
And how to make sure we maintain technical superiority and an advantage, but also partner effectively and make sure that the working capital fund model still survives. Yep. And we maintain this talent.
Got it. Okay. And I'm actually glad you asked. I forgot to mention one thing. If you go back to that, you don't have to go back to it, but the APTEP slide, what's missing in that slide? The Navy, right? And so that's why people push back from it. That's why I say it's a model to use, but you could just as easily turn that from 3 to 4. And in fact, I have a slide that actually includes that, but that's not the one I use here. And so I'm particularly fond of the Warfare Centers and of course NRL and the other labs, because I used to always call them the bridge from S&T to the fleet anyway, before tech bridges existed. But the trick is have them engaged in this. And so there's a huge piece of this is the workforce side of that. And we would kind of argue that, and what we have seen over time is if we can link up the labs, the Warfare Centers, and the tech bridges, the Warfare Centers are doing this effectively. This is way before tech bridges. Working with the universities and the various groups there, outreach to those, making sure they engage with their community. That's a tremendous opportunity for the workforce in terms of maintaining their knowledge. Doesn't really just cost time, which on a working capital, of course, that is money, right? We know that. So how do we do that? And that's kind of where we started doing the NIPA challenges, where we provide our money to the Warfare Centers so they can use that to engage with the community. Seed money, saying we have an award we can give you. The Warfare Centers will typically pay their people's time and maybe take it in under 219. But at the same time, then they can do, so they're paying for it, but we're paying for the money that goes external, which is sort of, I call it the carrot. But what's happened, the great example is of course, which is probably been in place for really the longest, is the Northeast Tech Bridge, the 401 Tech Bridge, which have done multiple challenges already. Now they are fully engaged, more so with the private sector. Even though they were always good, they're much better at it now. Much better linked with University of Rhode Island, for example. And so this idea that you can make small investments that the lab can use to better communicate and connect to the community around it. One of the examples gets a composites. I guess they were almost right outside the gate, and they never hadn't heard of them before. And so now they're a big defense contractor, by the way. So so think of it that way. And very importantly, though, be selective. So yeah, you're not necessarily going to go and say, okay, everything we do is going to connect with the outside community. But be totally cognizant of that outside community and how you can reach out and utilize that network the best you can. Use it correctly. Does that make sense? That answer? Kind of.
If I may just add, last year we had Steve Blink, who's one of the co-founders of the Hacking for Defense model Rich was talking about earlier. And one of the things he mentioned during his talk was the fact that we should really lean on our competitive advantage as the Navy Marine Corps. And maybe industry is ahead in some areas, and we should be thinking about how to capture and integrate that. And, you know, maybe if we stop doing some of the things that we're doing, we would see another opportunity. I think when we think about our workforce in the future of what people are doing, it might look differently tomorrow, next week, next year, the next 10 years than it does today. And our advantage is we know the Navy and Marines. I hope that's true of everyone. I know I still need to work on it. But I think knowing where we belong in this and being the integrators to really take commercial technology and our technology and integrating it is where we have an advantage. And if we get really good at that and get really good at our contracting and our tech transfer authorities so that we can do that quickly, I think there'll be plenty of work. Yeah, that's right. My 2 cents.
I think that's a good point. Something else that, I mean, everybody's super busy, right? And so what happens is, I know ONR, the Warfighter Centers, I'm going to say you stay inside the fence, not because you want to necessarily stay inside the fence, but you're just so busy you can't. At the same time, if you start connecting to the outside community, it'll be a little more natural flow. People will go, well, this is not Navy. By the way, I know people have always told me back when the Energy Accelerator was happening, NavalX said, why don't you just give us the money? We know how to spend it. And I said, well, first it's congressional money, so you can't have it. And then the other one was simply, you don't know what's coming, right? So I would suggest that if you go through the 117 companies at the Elemental Accelerator, if you thought back and think outside climate change, which now is part of our mission for real, is that think back and you go, wow, why would I care about that? Even I was saying that back when they were funding some of these things. Now I'm looking at it going, oh my God, it's exactly what we need now. So just because you see something and maybe you don't need it now, doesn't mean you don't. Let's see where it goes, especially if we know there's a market for it, because that will allow it to mature. So when the time comes, it's there for us.
Other questions? Yeah, Ty.
Thank you, Rich. I got a question. I don't know how to phrase this, but what about, what's your vision for transition? The efforts here. We talk about commercialization, STEM, and all that, but how do we transition to like a program office and deliver capabilities to warfighters and things like that? Because we're always, at the Warfare Center, we always struggle with, that transition, crossing the bridge, valley of death kind of thing. We talk about a lot of this commercial helping the economy and things like that, but what about the warfighter transition, these capabilities that we may be developing into that? Yeah, so there's multiple opportunities here, right? And so if you look at what the Elemental launch are doing, these are and from the Elemental, really high percentage, will be commercial products or commercial products today. So you can do fairly fast acquisition that way, right? So that's that type of thing. Is it going to fit all the things we need? No, it's what's there. Now people go, well, let's get the PEOs to give input into the Elemental, what they're going to fund. We're only about a third of the program now. so no, we're not going to interfere with that trajectory. We're going to let it happen. Plus, there's climate change, and so believe me, we're going to appreciate exactly what they're doing. Same with Launch Alaska. But that's one of those. It's a very important point, and this is back when we were looking at a private capital opportunity space here. Is that who should play into that?
And this is where the PEOs, resource sponsors should be saying, all right, we want to influence where those investments are made because we're interested. Just like Bob does with the SBIR, people say, hey, why don't you be like AFWERX? Well, AFWERX does not connect their topics to their acquisition. And that's why they're getting beat up now. The model that Bob and his team follow is we want to fund things that people want, particularly the PEOs. So I think if you build out this model in this investment space at any time, we want to bring the right people in and helping develop that. I will tell you this though, because I've seen another agency build this out. That's exactly kind of what they do. They say you maintain the general mission, but you don't let the government make the decisions on exactly what to invest in. Because there's a tendency, they don't know they don't know the private sector as well. What you really want to do is you want to make sure they're investing in solutions. They propose the problems, and then you want the accelerator to look for those solutions for you, because there's a whole bunch of things that go into this. It's not technology, it's businesses, all those pieces. So in fact, most of the decisions aren't made on the technology. They're based on kind of where they are as a business and the capabilities of the people in that business. Because the best technology will never be available if the business doesn't work, right? There's other ways of doing that, and I would say that's not maybe the model. If you see something, I want that technology, I don't know, find $10 million to give to them, right? I have a total budget of $10 million last year and $20 million this year. So kind of hard for me to use all that money for one company. But totally agree. There's multiple ways you have to do it. And it's really got an early up engagement with that PEOs, get them by, and we're doing it with the challenges. If you look at the people, the way we do this is they have a mission model canvas. They need to show who's the acquisition sponsor interested in this, who's the research sponsor interested in this, who's going to actually field it. So they go through those steps up front.
I apologize. I totally want to comment too. Just a question. Paul Herbert's not allowed to answer because he was involved, but how was 5G installed at Miramar, the first military base with 5G? Who wants to raise their hand and guess? Except for Paul. Yes. Oh, you were involved too. All right. All right. Go ahead, Jason.
The challenge for Miramar, it wasn't part of the 5G tranches or anything like that. A lot of people think that it was. Basically, a commercial vendor, commercial provider, Verizon Wireless, wanted to stand up cell towers on a base. The challenge that we had at Miramar, and correct me, is that we didn't have any rules or regulations with regards to 5G as far as radiation and those policies and things like that. So working with the Don CIO, we got an interim authority to radiate granted to all installation commanders as long as certain studies had been done. So all of the studies with regards to radiation on fuels or radar or personnel, and then as long as the EMI study had begun to see what electromagnetic interference would be, then the installation commander had the authority to say to Verizon Wireless, you want to stand up a 5G tower, fine. There's a real estate agreement that has to go in place, and there's a certain amount of cost associated that company has to pay in order to use that land and use that power. But we relied on Verizon to bring in that capability. Now, if we want to use that for military purposes or organic purposes, we have to find some way to fund that, and there are other ways to bring in companies to help us with those things. But standing up 5G was really all about partnering with Verizon or the various providers and allowing them to come on base and opening up the gate. And we can do that with T-Mobile or AT&T or any other provider.
Not the answer I was looking for, but a fantastic one. Paul, sorry. But just what I want you guys to think about is creativity. So it's not just FAR-based contracts or non-FAR-based contracts. It could also be.
Yes, just to add into all that, actually, there's a lot more history. It actually goes back to Carlin's E-Step probably almost 10 years ago, where the Marine Corps learned to work with University of California, San Diego. Then they came to us. So we have a MOA between the Marines and the NavalX Pacific. So we're acting as their T2 arm. and they're providing the base and all the needs. And then we go out and do creatives with companies utilizing that. So we've done one with Verizon, we've done one with Qualcomm. They were actually going to bring the Army ERDC in. And so that's the whole thing, right? Once you start building a little bit of success and some teaming, people start to figure out that yes, you can do it, and they start coming to you with more and more ideas. And that's where we've, I guess, expanded with the Marines. We started with a very narrow MOA. Now it's a larger, broader MOA to cover our whole spectrum. So there'll probably be a lot more coming out of it, and we'll see. What cost? That's Verizon.
So, interesting thing here, using a cooperative research and development agreement, it was zero cost. It was a partnership with Verizon, so we didn't pay. We didn't go through the acquisition process. We went through the tech transfer office. So there are ways to get technology moving faster if we partner, and that's kind of what this is about here.
And I'm glad you mentioned the E-Step piece, because that's probably a next step now, but that's not because we're just not all about energy, but it's a good point. So we're just rebranding it. And that was actually set up for had requested Secretary Mavis in his second year, said, I want to get new technology on the base, get people to evaluate and adopt it. So that's another model of another pathway to how do we get things inserted into the system is I pay people to do it, right? So we're paying people's time to get the technology, get their hands onto it, and create a workforce in energy, by the way, which we did. So that comes down to you hear all these people talking about, we need more prototyping and experimentation. It's exactly what E-Step was set up. And so and I like your point about that, we're a tiny program. These projects are about $500,000 a piece. But at the same time, as soon as these things show up, people build out. And at least the part of the Miramar, I wasn't aware that Verizon was first, which is great, though, by the way. And so the thing is, we'd already been working with Miramar, funding some of their work with the ESTCP program, by the way, in terms of establishing their microgrid program there, their renewable resilient microgrid program there. So it's not like, wow, we're just going to go do this, it'll be done. No, sometimes you just have to build out. You have to kind of trust how you're doing it. But I think one of those biggest part of that was getting the people involved, right? I see so many programs where people shove technology onto a base. The Department of Energy is expert at that. I think they've kind of realized that doesn't work too well because they don't engage the base. They engage maybe the energy manager, and then when DOE leaves, usually they remove the technology. But if we get the people involved in it, that's a big plus. And in fact, I'm glad you mentioned the CIO. It reminded me too, the reason NIWC PAC became the lead for E-Step was because we were looking primarily at grid work back in the day before that was set up. And we quickly learned we're never going to get any intelligent energy grid like network onto the base unless NIWC PAC's involved. And so that actually set up an entire cyber physical security lab at NIWC and at PAC, and also NIWC PAC in Hawaii. So again, it's building out that capability, not just let's put technology in.
We're going to take one more question, but for those online who don't understand any of these acronyms, I would just recommend digging through your program. It has most of these programs highlighted. I think CRADA, Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, NIWC PAC, Naval Information Warfare Center Pacific, which is located in San Diego. Everything else, good luck. It's in the program and in our annual report online for Tech Bridges and a bunch of websites. Sorry, it's not easier. Okay. There's a question online, possibly. Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. There's a lot of great questions. Thank you. All right, so one, for successful partnership with industry, our technical workforce needs to know and understand industry standards, then know and understand the specific changes required for naval equipment. Then common ground can be identified, understood, and meaningful and effective collaborations occur. Agreed. Okay, yeah. I don't know who these people are. Unfortunately, when you use this app, you can't see the names, but I give full credit to whoever that is. Here's another one. Pull-out programs are great. I know NSWC, or the Naval Surface Warfare Center, Carter Rock, has a ship design program ongoing. However, let's say that the youngest quarter of the workforce should have direct opportunity for such transitional relevant learning opportunities with supervised practice and full spectrum acquisition, like design, production, integration, installation, testing, sustainment experiences. Okay, I also agree. I'm sorry. Is there? Okay. Oh, these are great
agree.
comments.
I agree.
So I'm just going to encourage folks to read the LinkedIn comments. These are awesome. We will take questions. I think the comments are awesome, but maybe we'll read them on our own. But thank you. That was awesome. Really wish I knew the names on here. I would give you guys credit for your thoughts. Any response to that?
The ship design program at Carter Rock used to be in my department. So yeah, it's an awesome program.
Well, you're playing to the crowd.
But the point about, again, why are we doing that? I mean, it's advancing the technology, but it's always been about the people. You know, so I will say, I tell people maybe got older and realized the people are more important than the tech. Tech is cool, but I was also a professor, so our job is educate. And so that's that. And I think if you don't build that into your whole program, and I can go specifics on it, probably not here, but we specifically include a workforce development, a lot of stuff with veterans, for example, in our programs as a required component.
Yeah, I'll just add. There was a question or a comment earlier that I read about. We're talking about STEM when you were showing the APTEP slide on the Asia Pacific Technology Education Partnership. But that person, I think his name is Robert, didn't see a ton regarding workforce development. I said we agree, but basically workforce is a broad scope. It starts with STEM. You don't know who's going to be in your workforce, whether they're working directly for the Department of Navy or for our partnered organizations or industry academia. We don't really know who's going to solve our problems next. So I think that STEM and workforce development, they all kind of flow together, and then providing those opportunities for our current workforce to go and learn about industry and academic opportunities are great. There are fellowships that do that. There's some that you can go and spend time in industry here. A lot of military members are doing that. And obviously partnering with your tech transfer office, you probably get a good beat on who's doing what in the space. And if you have any questions, absolutely reach out to your ORDAs. I forgot what that acronym means. I apologize, but it's our tech transfer leads at our warfare centers.
And I think this is a big point. So when I think STEM, admittedly, probably think K-12 or maybe it's the full spectrum. And so I've got a slide what I didn't show is that goes everywhere from pre-K up to professional development. And all these programs that we have, we're big on internships, by the way, because they're fairly low cost. They allow flexibility. And so we typically will make sure that every one of these programs, if it needs an internship program, we fund that within the program. In multiple cases, we fund it actually as a separate activity under STEM award. But it's professional development.
All right, I got one more question, and then we'll close this awesome keynote. Perfect. So Lang just put it on the board from Roy Weiser. Could you go into more detail into the exact steps in transition from university and small business into the H4X accelerator model?
Great question. We'll have more on that soon because we're working with H4X Labs to exactly do that. We have a program that's looking at, we have a long-running program called Naval Enterprise Partnership, teaming with University for National Entrepreneurship, Neptune. And within that, the requirement is for the take that technology they've been about and actually spin that as a prototype and potentially create a startup. I've seen a number of cases where students will pick up and actually do their own startups out of that. And so, and we're doing the Hacking for Defense, right? We now have a Hacking for Oceans that we'll also be supporting. And so those teams there, or those research teams that are coming out, we're looking at how do we actually directly link them in to H4X Labs and support that.
We're going to take a water break, coffee break. Bathrooms, just make sure there's 3 stalls in each one. Close the doors behind you. Wash your hands. COVID's still out. There's refreshments. And guys, if you need seats, there are seats on the other side. We're broadcasting from both sides. We have the summit stage and we have the global stage. And if you have any questions, you can find people at the technology booths to ask. And you guys can see you guys at 10:40. We're about to get started with our panel. Just wanted to make another announcement. If you guys do need a mask, they do have masks at the front desk. You know, sometimes, you know, sweating and stuff, you need a refresher, you can get one from outside. But again, keep your mask on inside. Yes, COVID's still out. Yes, we have our vaccines, but just for, you know, safety precautions, if you're not eating or drinking, we're going to take it airplane style. Steve, here you go. We're starting with our next session. And guys, after this morning session, we're actually going to be having both stages running different presentations. And so if you have your brochures at the end, at the back of your pages, you'll see which talks you want. And this is the global stage. The summit stage is through the doors on my left, my right, for the back of the room. And so whichever talk you'd like to participate in, just go to that stage because there'll be separate talks and separate questions. Thank you so much.
We'll give folks a couple of minutes to get seated back in the hot box. All right. That's them. Very good. So you'll see some folks I've been talking with all week as we come in and get seated. Fort Meade, the PAO classroom. I don't know the CO out there. I want to say it's Major Perry is the commanding officer. But the CO was kind enough to loan 6 of his Marines down to us to make this event go well. So make sure if you see these folks around, you thank them. Mike, they already have water. I'm way ahead of you. Mike's from the shipyard. He's a maintenance guy over there with submarines. But we've got the Marines here. So without them, there's no way we could have put this off. Because last night we were doing some final checks and things like that. So where are my 3 there? Rodriguez, Getz, Garcia. Let's give them a round of applause. Sergeant Parsons, he's out at the main registration table. Maybe you saw him sweating to death out there this morning. And then we've got my shadow running around. That's lineman. She's been helping me. And I think that's it, right? I got everybody? Did I get everybody, Rodriguez? Okay, great. So, yeah, make sure you just thank them for all the hard work they've been doing. So this event here, we're going to have a panel, and we've switched it up a little bit with the Marine Corps panel today. We're going to allow you to ask a few questions. So I did hear some questions of Dr. Carlin when he was up here. One of the questions was, I got it written down here, how do we get into the program of records? Well, let me tell you, folks, right here we've got cradle to grave program of record, folks. Let me start off by giving you a quick introduction of myself. My name is Steve Frail. I work at NavalX Atlantic. That's down in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm no longer rotational here. I am an alum of NavalX. Worked for the old director, Captain Frank Futcher, as the OPSO. And I've been working, so I've known most of the panelists today. I've been working Marine Corps Intel for about 18 years. So without further ado, let's see, the panel today, we're going to talk about how a capability or a need goes all the way from the forward edge of the battle area and makes its way back to the people who make decisions, and then we deliver a product back to that devil dog or hard charge Marine on the forward edge of the battle area. So one of the questions today, how does my product, some of the industry, and I also encourage our Warfare Center people out there too with the NICE projects that we have. I know we do NICE for basic and applied research and some things, but we also try to get those government engineers to get those products worked back into the program of records. And how do we do that? Well, we've got the panel here today to talk about that. So I'm going to get right into it. I think I'm going to introduce Alicia first. So Alicia comes to it, sure, in her former life, you did, let's see, it was non-lethal, right? That's where we first met and brought you over onto the Marine Corps team. So Alicia's from NavalX Atlantic. She is an embed at Marine Corps Systems Command for Program Management Intel Systems. She's an ATI, which is an Advanced Technology Integrator, right? And how apropos to have your boss that you support, Lieutenant Colonel Bain, sitting right next to you. And Lieutenant Colonel Bain is PMIS Actual, so Program Manager Intel Systems for the Marine Corps, MARCOR Syscom. And MARCOR Syscom is part of the RDA. So we're all part of the RDA under Secretary Stephanie, who may or may not have been on Zoom today. I don't know if we were able to have him. I was running around with some of the Marines getting the event going. But that's where these two folks are from. So I'll just start off with a couple of softball questions here for y'all. So Alicia, why don't we start with you, since you're right here next to me? How do you interact with the other panelists? And I'm not sure if your mic is on, but maybe grab that mic and let me see. Is this on? Now it's on.
Now it's on.
So maybe we can pass this. Oh, that's a good one.
Good to go.
Oh, it's
Yep.
proper. So how do you interact with the other panelists here on the stage?
Okay, so my role as Advanced Technology Integrator for PM Intelligence Systems is really to work more on the science and technology end of the development and acquisition spectrum. So surveying the state of the art, being aware of what's going on in industry, academia, and with our research and development partners across the naval enterprise as well as the joint enterprise. So I bring that knowledge, those relationships, and help to mature those capabilities so that they can become a program record. So obviously supporting the PM by pulling in those new capabilities to answer existing or anticipated requirements, which are generated out of CD&I, who we have a very close relationship so that we can anticipate what those future needs, what those future requirements are going to be. So we have a continuous relationship between the program office, the requirements developers, and the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, who's the S&T arm of the Marine Corps, does a lot of the experimentation, some of the research and development to inform the requirements, which ultimately come over to the program office, and we develop those capabilities. Starting to grow our relationship, my relationship, with the MEFs, with the operating force, CENTCOMs, the other joint services, to, like I say, stay ahead of in anticipation of what those needs and requirements are going to be. Because I'm looking 5, 10, 20 years out, less focus on the here and now, but understanding those needs today helps inform where we invest in the future. And then DCI, certainly I'm involved in what's called the ISR integration team, which is a smaller group within DCI focused on the rapid maturation of fairly mature technologies, getting those capabilities, experimenting with them, and getting them into fielded capabilities in the hands of the users in a fast fashion. So I think there is certainly a collaborative, iterative relationship amongst all of the panelists here.
Sounds like you don't do very much. That was
No,
a
not
lot,
at all.
right? Holy smokes. Okay, it's too hot to laugh? All right, we won't do any more jokes. So then what we have, so let's bring in, you mentioned the warfighter and how to talk to the warfighter. So we've got Lieutenant Colonel Kulitz down there. Lieutenant Colonel Kulitz comes from us from San Diego, California, Camp Pendleton, California, in Oceanside there, commanding officer of 1st Intel Battalion. And he's a career intel officer as he turns on his microphone. Nope. No, just kidding. Okay. Hey, one of you, come on. Thank you. All right, so we'll figure that out. That's a dead mic over there. So, Lieutenant Colonel, why don't you tell us about how you interact with some of the folks here and how you might interact with Alicia. Do you know Alicia? Talk about that experience if you had over at 1st Intel.
Sure. So best thing about the Marine Corps is the Marine Corps will always let you know when there's a problem. So good or no?
I'm thinking that's a dead mic too. Apologize.
I'm sorry.
Runner?
It was a bad joke. Anyway, it's fine. It was one of yours. So I'll say it again so people can hear now. The best thing about the Marine Corps is the Marine Corps will always let you know when there's a problem with anything that has to do with the Marine Corps. We'll let you know when things are going well, not as often though. So what I have taken over a career being an intel officer is understanding the small thank yous go a long way. So like when somebody at a higher head, so everyone in here is a higher headquarters to me. No one in here works for me. And to be fair, no one in my battalion works for me. I work for all of them. So they bring their pain points to us, to the field grade officers, to the senior staff and COs. You know, those career military folks whose job it is to help answer the young Marine or young sailor's question and say, hey, sir, hey, ma'am, what if we had a thing that could, and I don't know where to go from there. Oh, okay, well, I have friends. I have friends that I've built over a career, so let me start calling in some favors. So when you joke, Lieutenant Colonel Bain and I were lieutenants together years ago, right? So when you joke about knowing people over a career, that's, Steve, your point, how do we interact? That's how we interact is at the grassroots level, we're calling in, hey, who do you know? Hey, who can help me where? We're playing a lot of pickup hockey or pickup stickball. As we professionalize things and we start to say, hey, I'm getting ready to go on a deployment. Hey, I see a need that we think based off the Commandant's guidance or the CNO's NAV plan or the Tri-Maritime strategy, I think we need to be looking in this direction. I don't think we have a way to get there yet. Who's doing what? At that point, we're looking for where can we best integrate to perhaps test some gear on behalf of the service or the naval force? Where can we best inform requirements? What after actions have we done recently that we could send back to create requirements? So it very much turns into if I've got a secret, then it's never going to get held or helped. But if I take the time to do the thing that no one ever wants to do after a long exercise, which is write a very detailed after action report and share it, and then go on a road trip and share my information, at that point you start to get some traction. And at that point, what I found, I mean, shoot, the reason why I'm sitting up here is because we met earlier this year, right? And you said, hey, you want to come out and do a thing? I said, roger that. Marines don't know how to say no. I mean, we know how to say no, but we also know how to follow orders pretty easily. And I think that is what makes NavalX so sticky. It's the idea that everybody in here wanted to be in this room. Some of us might have been told to be in this room, like Steve told me, but it's too hot in here. That's the problem. It's
Hot in here, right? I mean, the audience is like, oh my God, we got to listen to this for an hour or something? Come on, you're going to love this. These guys are great.
It only gets worse, to be honest with you.
Yes, honestly, yeah.
So there it was. They're self-deprecating. That's what they're looking for. The short answer is when you find a coalition of the willing, you remember them. You take their business card, you get their contact information, and then you start texting with them, calling with them, Slack, Teams, whatever it is that that you find is the best way. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook for those of us that are of age. That's how you build it, and then it turns into, oh, hey, I saw you do a thing, or somebody will post, hey, I was at, hey, shoot, what did you learn there? So when you talk about like how does the warfighter find things, it's through using the network of everyone that we know over time, and then building upon each other to use those warm introductions to keep the relationships going. That's how I interact with people around here.
Yeah. Hey, Rodriguez, why don't we grab the mic there from Lieutenant Colonel, and he's got a dead mic in his hand there, the other one, and we'll get that one up and running. So when we talk about requirements, I'm going to pivot over to Colonel Rao. So Colonel Rao, you are at Command Element Intelligence under CDD, Combat Development Directorate, which is our Capabilities Directorate, yep. which is the Marine Corps' Requirements Command. And you have a great history here. I've got all your I mean, you've done a couple of things in the Marine Corps, it seems. You like SIGINT, Native of the Pacific Northwest is the easiest one that I can read here. But my goodness, like MAGTAF Intel, Aviation, Marine Air Ground Task Force on the aviation side, on the ground side, Radio Battalion, CO, like you've done it all. So now you're at the requirements level. So when folks like Lieutenant Colonel Kulitz's folks come to you with like, hey, I need this, or I want this, or he comes to you, like what is your response as the requirements officer? I mean, are you the stakeholder? Do you interact with them? I mean, do you even care at times?
Like, when do we not? We were talking earlier.
Yeah.
You should have taped us in the back. We had a
no, that's what this panel is for.
Really
no, we didn't want to do videos. Everybody complained that you didn't want to do a video.
But But this is a start of a discussion,
Great.
right? That we're going to have, and it's going to be ongoing. We're not going to solve it all today. This is the beginning of it. When do we not get feedback from the fleet? Communities of practice, lance corporals and corporals, the future staff sergeants and gunnies, captains and majors of the Marine Corps have got to be involved now. Why is today important? Like right now, this time important for innovation for a couple reasons. The Commandant told us to do it. Like we have got to reset because we're facing a threat that's outpacing us, and we've got to learn to keep up and outpace them. The other part of it too is I think we're in a critical period of time where there's an overlap and a convergence of generations. So I'm still one that remembers rotary phones, right? Still one that, you know, platoon leaders and that, and you learned to do command and control and intel with yellow canaries. We knew what those were, and radios, and everything was done manually with intel journals to track where the information was going, who needed to know what, and did you tell them? Okay. And then we've lived, so from that analog, we've seen the development. I was with the Warfighting Lab when it was the Commandant's Warfighting Lab in the mid-90s when it first stood up, and seeing how the innovation began and seeing how we started to go from manual to digital to just the initial stages of that and it grow. Understanding still why it looks like a carriage return on your keyboard, even though it's no longer a typewriter. There's some value to that. And I've seen that out in the fleet. Hey, this is why we do things that way, because I remember what it was like in the analog. And the fleet, young Marines see that and go like, oh, now that makes sense. That's why we have an intel journal and not just a copy of the chat room that's kept.
So are they using
right?
are you using the carriage return? Is that something? Because I use that term a lot.
Yeah.
And people look at me like I'm crazy,
right.
which I am a little crazy, but the carriage return.
It's good to be a little bit crazy. But so we're in a critical time where the dinosaurs, look around the room, look at the difference, the range and ages here. This is not going to be around forever. Those that grew up with the analog and are seeing how the digital is coming to the front and can still talk in both realms with the young generation, right now we can get after this. That window will start to close quickly. So the discussion today is, okay, the old guys like me, who my last tour in the Marine Corps is at Command Element Intelligence and Capabilities Development Directorate for the Deputy Commandant for Combat Development Integration. I asked to come here. I asked to stay an extra year on active duty to do this because this is the best way I can see the future of the Marine Corps and have a part in that. And that is going to be true for every Lance Corporal and Corporal that will be the staff sergeants and gunnies inside as part of the stand-in force in the weapon engagement zone of peer adversaries in the future. They can have that same interaction now. And we do that on a regular basis. There are communities of practice going on every week. There's field user evaluations. There are field support reps, right, that are out there taking feedback and feeding those things back up to us. The first question I would ask when you're going out, getting ready to go out, and hey, I need a new capability, did you check and see what was already in the program of record? We talked about this earlier. Like in our TO weapon, which is the Distributed Common Ground Surface System, it's a 4-letter word, DCGS. That's for intel, that's our analytical, that's our TO weapon. It's a family of systems that is all source, GeoInt, and SIGINT. That system has over 1,100 apps in it. Do we know all the capabilities that are in that before you go out and shop for a new one? Have you checked to see what's currently in the program of record? And if it's not exactly doing what you want, we don't need a new program of record. We just have to modernize the one we've got.
So all that sounds really expensive. So I think I want to pivot over to Mel over there. So Mr. Chapman, you retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel. You didn't put your both uniforms, both enlisted and officer, but you didn't put your MOS in here. Why don't you share that? What was your?
I was 34. Well, when I was enlisted, I was a 60-52.
What the heck is that?
For hold your horses.
All right, I'm holding them.
A4s and F4s. So I'm dating myself. And then I became a 34-4 financial manager as I got a little bit smarter. I wasn't turning wrenches anymore.
And folks, those are over at the Air Space Museum if you want to see them. No, but Mel, you're with DCI, Deputy Commandant for Information, and you control the budget for all these things that the Colonel's been talking about here. So Like, how do you prep and palm? Don't we palm every year, program a memorandum every year, and that's such a big deal. And how do you keep up with these teenagers who want everything, if you will?
Right. So we always like to think of requirements. Requirements are great things. Requirements without resourcing is what? A hallucination, right? Okay. So
How does he get off all the laughs, sir? How is this going on, Tom? It's cooling down? All right.
So one of the most important things when we look at the requirements, because I was trying to follow the string here, if you can just bear with me for a second. So we have the Marines out in the field, they identify a requirement. That requirement is worked back through S&T. S&T works with the capability program managers. And then once they find a potential solution, we get into this dogfight that's called the POM. The POM is where we actually fight for the resourcing to support that requirement. Now it competes. It competes against a plethora of multiple requirements. But what's most important? Who drives that decision? It's not Mel Chapman. It's not any of these panel members. There's one guy, the commandant, drives that requirement of what we're going to invest in for the future. So there is if you don't understand the process we go through, there's a 4-phase process or a 2-phase process, planning and programming that we go through. What I want to talk to you really is about the planning piece, because I think that's very important. Why? Because there are other higher authorities that are also we have to follow through. You got the Secretary of Defense. He has his DPG, his Defense Planning Guidance. He's telling us directly what we need to invest in. It may include or may not include what's coming from the field. We also have the CIG, which is the Combined Intelligence Guidance. ODNI is telling us where to invest in. So and the Commandant's guidance is telling us where to invest. All of these things are coming to bear. So as the Marine Corps works through this, what we call the problem framing, we're trying to decipher what is most important that we invest in. Once we decide what is most important, after we've gone through our rankings, now what gives us the best value for return of resourcing? Because we have to do something that you may not have heard of, divestments. So what are we going to divest to invest? What's least important? This is all happening during the planning process, because the things that we divest, now we're going to invest in this new technology, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's over time. So at the end of all the discussions, at the end of all the debates, resourcing is laid in. It's laid in during the programming process. So we will program on an annual basis, and this is consistently anywhere between $2 billion to $5 billion a year. It's just reprogramming, not new money. It's money being reprioritized against all the investments all the new requirements that are coming in. So don't think that every time you see us hear, oh, there's a new POM, there's new money. No, something has been divested, or something has been refined, or something has been set aside to make room for all the new technology that is coming aboard. We just had a discussion of the rapid pace of the way technology is advancing today. Today we spent $1 on this new technological advancement. In 6 months, it's old news. How do we keep pace with that? So we talk about incrementalism. So as we work through the process, you'll see we'll go through S&T for quite some time till we kind of get an idea of what we really want to invest in. And then we make that leap of faith to begin the initial investment. That investment is going to refine over time. Because remember, the POM is how many years? 5 years. We were just talking in the back that, we deal with 5 different budgets every year. PB 21 is what we're in now. PresBud 21, we're going to close that out. PresBud 22 starts next month. We're working POM 23. Well, some of us is working POM 23. Some of us are still waiting to see the results of POM 23. And we just started POM 24. Did you know that they're talking about POM 25 right now? Wow. So Palm 25 takes us all the way out to FY 30. So we're juggling 5 different budget cycles at any given time. And in each one of those budget cycles, there is a major decision being made. If we go back and turn the clock back, let's see, Palm 20 was the start of when we initially did our force design investments. That got after major capabilities. We can only do it in one time, doing it in a 5-year increment. We divested of roughly $5 billion, and then we did it some more. We look at Palm 21. That was a major theme investment. Palm 22 was another major theme investment. Palm 23 was really I would think for the Marine Corps, a major turning point of taking dollars and investing in capabilities. And now I think we're closing out, getting towards the vision with Palm 24. And then with Palm 25 is really more of a sustainment piece of what all those Palm cycles have been, which is a campaign of Palms. So when you look at what DCI does, DCI manages and helps help manage that risk and where we invest, where we divest, to ensure we have a common vision going forward. So one of the major attributes that I think the DCI team comes to bear when we're talking about managing capabilities. Don't get it wrong. I don't want anyone to think that DCI manage. No, we don't manage. We just provide the oversight of the resourcing that's going in. Why? Because we don't have a whole lot of it. So whatever dollars that we spend, whatever capabilities we place against a requirement, we want to make sure that the Marine Corps is getting the best value for the dollar that's being put on the table.
So Mel, that was a really, I got a couple texts here because I'm watching my phone as well. Wow, Mel's really hitting it. So really, really nice explanation of how the Palm works and all that money works. So it sounds like to me, you get, Lieutenant Colonel Kulitz there has all the requirements in the want list and the Christmas wish book from the Sears catalog. There's a throwback for you. I know you know what I'm talking about. And then he gives that to someone like Colonel Rao, who's the product owner or stakeholder representative, and then they have to come over to you because you got the checkbook. You're up there looking at how much we have, and you're just playing almost a shell game with the funding by reprioritizing it based on the Commandant's rules. And thank you for giving all the different documents that folks should be looking at if they're interested in this kind of process. So you give the budget over there to Colonel Rao, and Colonel Rao comes to our last person here who gets the ton of crap all the time, the material command, right? Over at Marcorps Syscom.
Sure, yeah.
So Lieutenant Colonel Bain, he's at the material command. It's your job to field stuff, the equipment to the Marines, the program of record equipment. You've got you're also a career intel officer. Been with the MAGTF across the Marine Air Ground Task Force, 1st Rated Battalion, 1 MEF G2, which there's 3 MEFs in the Marine Corps, Marine Expeditionary Force G2, the intel section. You got deployments to both Iraq and Afghanistan. And then you've come over, I think a year and a half ago or so to Marcorps Syscom as a project officer or a team lead. And now you're the old man. You're in the chair. You're running PMIS actual.
Absolutely.
So how, what is, so we've got all this stuff that folks have talked about this morning, but what are your biggest pain points that you can't control of these 3 people over here? This is where we get evocative, provocative, and I want you to jab them a little bit to make the audience go, yeah, jab them.
You want to give me the chance to do that, right?
I want you to jab them.
Well,
yeah.
Now it's my turn.
This is your chance.
Yeah, well, no, Steve, thanks. I appreciate it. Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm David Bain. I'm the Program Manager for Intelligence Systems at Marine Corps Systems Command. It's fantastic to be here with everybody, and especially up on the stage with my counterparts here. Let's get to pain points, and I think it kind of starts off with the ecosystem of how a capability becomes a requirement, right? And as Mel just kind of outlined, and as you heard earlier, right, it is dizzying. It is dizzying as you're looking at all these different time horizons, right? You got the current fight, you got 5 years, you got 10 years out, and we're each kind of having a piece of that pie, right? And looking at that ecosystem of how a capability becomes a requirement. And so I'm also glad that we're here to talk a little bit about innovation, right? Because innovation has a particular place inside of that often dizzying ecosystem. And so I find it extremely helpful to kind of just, hey, how do I boil it back down? What is my place in this ecosystem? And for those of you who aren't super familiar with Marine Corps Systems Command, we have a really simple mission, and that is to equip the individual Marine, the individual intelligence Marine, with premier intelligence capability. And so,
You know, pull-ups are simple too, sir. I just want to let you know that. I mean, you just pull up, right? But I think it's much more difficult than you're leading on.
well, no,
I think you have a difficult mission.
It can be, yeah, it absolutely can be, but you got to center on something. You got to center on that why, and you got to center on that purpose, and it's that individual Marine, Steve. Absolutely, that individual Marine that makes up the Lieutenant Colonel Kulitz's battalion, right? And battalions all over the MEF. That individual Marine, and innovation, right? Particularly in the context of force design, and the Marine Corps' continuing, effort to maintain relevancy, to adapt, to really outmaneuver our adversaries. And we do that so many different ways, right? We do that through training. We do that through our POM cycles. We do that through requirements development. We do that through technology development, right? And what we try to do is identify those technologies that can be of most benefit to the Marine and what they need to warfight, and that meets the requirements that Colonel Rao's developing. And so, I think it's really helpful, again, to see it as a web, right? An ecosystem web, where you have to innovate all along that web, right? And that innovation, right? It's not by Herculean effort, right? It's a daily inch by inch move to innovate, right? It is a fight to innovate daily. On our spreadsheets, in our documentation in the 5,000, right? That we have to do to maintain our faith with the American taxpayer. So we gotta find ways to innovate, right? It's not just, and it's not the thing. Innovation is not the thing. It is the human. It is the Marine. And so I think, again, it's complex. And so pain points, right? From my vantage point, a pain point is not being fast enough. Not being fast enough. Not getting the capability that he describes to me out to Lieutenant Colonel Kulitz's battalion, and working with our partners at the Surface Warfare Center. It's a team effort, Steve. It's a team effort, and you're right. When you pull back out, it's super complex, because not only do I have the Surface Warfare Centers, the requirements developers, the advocates, I also have Congress, right? Our partners in Congress, right? That we have to talk to and look at those horizons and describe a narrative, a vision, 5 years out, 10 years out, backed up with funding, right? That gives us enough flexibility to innovate for what they're going to need in the future, right? Because right now, why innovation is so important is because, hey, the thing I'm getting ready to put out here, actually, of the 3 capabilities that literally Program Manager Intelligence Systems putting out this week across all the MEFs this week, from SCI to signals intelligence, it's, hey, you know what? When's it going to be obsolete? When's that thing going to be obsolete? So we got to innovate, and we got to innovate fast. And so in answer, it's not a pain point, right? It can be painful trying to stay fast enough, right, to keep pace with what Marines need.
It's also being flexible enough too, right?
Yeah.
It's writing the requirements broad enough and the capability.
Yeah, get the mics, sir. Come on, that's the way of the mics.
Built in enough.
No carriage return here.
The capability described in such a way that it has the adaptability, because I'm convinced the critical innovation is going to happen at the forward edge, at the tactical edge, where the mother necessity really is. It's life and death, and Marines will figure out how to make it work. They're on a short timeline, short horizon, right? The MEU has a 1-year workup.
I got a hard
They better
question.
have all their gear ready to go when the boat.
Y'all ready for this?
ships
We
out.
have an esteemed guest with us today, and I call him esteemed. It's Bob Smith. He's the Department of Navy's Office of SBIR and SSTR. Okay, so innovation is in the word. Small business innovation research, right? And SSTR is SBIR, Tech Transfer Research or something, or STSTR, something like that. So you guys talk about this, and you talked about looking at like what we have on the shelf for innovation, what's out there. I know today there's over 530 SBIR Phase 2s out there. This is for any of you now, even you, Mel. How many SBIRs have you grabbed a hold of and successfully tech transitioned into his program of records? Or have you done that? But you're, and at least you may have to help with this question, right? So you're the ATI, right? How many of you looked at? So let's hear it for the audience. Let's talk about SBIRs and innovation. How many SBIRs have you actually taken and brought into a program of record?
Okay, I'll take that, Stephen. I'm gonna pass it on to Alicia real quick. But I you know what? I'm gonna question the metric, right? I'm gonna question the metric because innovation, right, is just as much about failing fast and often as it is about getting the right answer. It is, and we gotta. I'm telling you, we gotta bake that into our culture, inch by inch. We gotta bake it into our culture. We have had successful transitions, and I'll let Alicia talk a little bit about that.
Let's hear them.
Okay, so I'd say right now, with PM Intel as a sponsor, we probably have 7 or 8 ongoing SBIRs, a couple phase 1s, more than that in phase 2s, which at this point are looking like they're going to transition. Everything is on that glide path. I've only been supporting PM Intel. I am a NIWC employee as well, supporting Intel for about 3.5 years. And as we know, the SBIR process isn't always the quickest if you start with a phase 1 and go through to a full capability. It's not the quickest, but it is a really great way to get to some of those non-traditional small business partners, and we've had a lot of success. We've also had a lot of success with the Rapid Innovation Fund, not currently funded, but another avenue that I know Lieutenant Colonel Bain, when he was a team lead, saw the value of that Rapid Innovation Fund, or RIF program, coming to a program of record and bringing capability. So small business innovative research, yes, we're fully engaged, and because the Marine Corps is small, and there's only a handful of us advanced technology integrators, typically when we come with a requirement, it competes well and makes it into the topic solicitation. So in that sense, Marine Corps, though we're small, we've been really lucky in getting some traction with the topics that we put out there. But I will say the challenge is, again, thinking 5-10 years out in the future, what that capability will look like in a program of record for a requirement perhaps that doesn't exist yet. So we have to go on what we understand the need from the fleet to be in anticipation of what that requirement looks like, because with an SBIR, whatever that original topic solicitation is, that's what's driving your requirement for that capability, and changing that halfway through is really challenging, if not impossible. So again, having the forethought of what needs to be in that solicitation so you're getting the right product at the right time is a challenge. But there's no shortage of technology solutions. It's articulating your needs in a way that gets you what you need.
So that's good for the audience, for our non-civilian workforce to hear, and also the our industry members and academia have come to this. So it sounds like you're doing quite well, actually. So you're doing better than most, but there's a lot of portfolios at Marcor Syscom. There's not just one, right? And so of the 500, that 500 some odd SBIRs that are out there, you're working with 8 of them. So is it Jeff Kemp? I think Jeff Kemp is your guy over there, Bob Smith's person at Marcor Syscom for the SBIRs. Sounds like he's doing a relatively nice job just with your portfolio. You've got 8. Probably wish there were more, but that's really a good start. That's a positive number. But Mel, I'd like to go over to you for a moment. I know the Colonel wants to go, but Mel, you got the money, man. So Mel, why don't you talk to us about what do you do? Like, do you have any equity in my wonderful community of Intel, or any of the other equities, to say, hey, I want to palm a little bit. I think you need a little more R&D. Do you ever coach them? I'm going to use the word coach. Do you coach any of the portfolios coming to you for money to say, hey, we want to throw you some extra scratch in here for R&D? Because I hear R&D is always a challenge to grab. So Mel?
So we just had a conversation about managing risk. Risk creates an opportunity for what I'm going to call opportunity investments. So if a program is under executing, or a program has, for whatever reason, it has, slid to the right, and there are now resourcing available. What we can do, remember when I said we go back and we look at where we have potential places where there may be weaknesses where we can surge, or where we can leap forward, or take advantage of an investment and kind of elevate it forward. This is where we take those additional R&D dollars, where we take PMC dollars, S&T dollars, and we can invest it into that particular technology or that particular program. This is what we do on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, because no program execute perfectly. You show me a perfectly executed program, I show you a program that doesn't exist.
Well, you need to get down there and see Lieutenant Colonel Bain's work, because he's doing really well.
Of course, yeah.
So we manage it by looking at the risk. And so who has the most value, who really kind of drives that, is the CPMs, it's the capability program managers. They're the lead in terms of where we can take that advantage. And when we take that advantage, now it's about where we take the resourcing advantage from a different program. And then we all become part of the Marine. There's a huge system afoot of how we realign dollars, how we do ATRs, if you know what that is, above threshold reprogramming, how we move those dollars throughout the services, throughout the Marine Corps. So it doesn't happen overnight, but there is the lead. So we DCI, we do lean heavily on CD&I to kind of lead us to that, what's the right way to go, and then we work the dollars in terms of how we invest. You got to understand, our portfolio is $13 billion. That includes Intel and C4. So that's not a whole lot of money. Trust me, it's not for the requirements that we're trying to drive towards. So
that's what, one Joint Strike Fighter? Isn't that how much they cost?
Hardly. So you have to, when you think through this process and the things that we're trying to sustain, there's very finite dollars that we can, that when we move those dollars. And the one person we have to answer to every time we move RDT, or we call investment dollars, or RDT&E, PMC, and or S&T dollars, there's one person that you have to answer to every time you move those dollars. Does anybody know who that is?
General Smith.
Congress.
Oh, we don't sometimes like them, right?
So, understand that, they are also a player. They're not up here today, but they are a major player as well as we go through these investments and we talk through these investments, we talk about risk and how we move and get after some of the risk.
So you're saying not only are you working all these other things with these folks, trying to get all them what they want, but you're also dealing with our Congress members to make sure they're doing it for their districts, making sure their states are having manufacturing parts and their constituents are happy, and making sure, sometimes making our lives hard, but they're doing it for their people too in their districts, which is important for America. So we really have the great American democracy, republic system working. But when it comes down to just us internal, once we get the funds and we pull them in, and you talk about cost, schedule, performance, I heard a little bit of that in there. So Colonel Rao, what do you think about cost, schedule, and performance? Like which is it all important to you? Is it that DAU answer, and not to besmirch DAU? I love my DAU people, but you can only have 2 of the 3. Like what is it most important to you? Is like, I know your requirements, maybe it's performance, or maybe it's all of it, or how do you work with everybody? I'm saying a lot here, but talk to me how all that comes together and what it means to you for cost, schedule, performance. And then queue up your questions, because I'm going to turn to the audience here once this gets done. So your audience questions will come to me, and then we'll.
So cost, performance, schedule. Ultimately, it's got to end up with a complete product, right? You can't leave a critical piece out just to stay with the schedule or keep under cost. That said, it's got to be good enough to be adaptable still, right? Because I'm convinced we're going to encounter conditions in the future that we didn't anticipate. And that's going to happen in the now at the forward edge. You've got to deliver a product that the Marines can use and adapt. Hedge the bets a little bit, right? I mean, it's got to be good enough, but it's got to be adaptable too. You got to be able to build on it. And one organization, because we brought Congress in, but one organization in this ecosystem that I mentioned in passing, we haven't talked about, who's critical, and as a key Navy partner, is the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. And General Watson, who's the Vice Chief of Naval Research. Think about that. For ONR, we have part of that. It's part of our ecosystem. So where I sit has S&T, most of the S&T. The big dog in that fight is McWill over here. Capabilities development with the requirements and identifying the gaps is in the middle, and then transitioning those S&T initiatives over into programs. There's a lot of SBIRS that goes on, SBIR that goes on over in McWill as well, and deliver those transitioning over to programs of record. I've been told by your predecessor that you need about three years of heads up, that McWill is looking at a capability, and you need to see that innovation coming your way and start planning for it about 3 years out to really be effective.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. And that's again, continuing the discussion about pain points, right? Getting fast enough. I think daily when we talk about innovation, right? We talked about the why, but two other things and we talked a little bit about culture, right? But the other part is relationships. So part of that is keeping the faith with our Marines to ensure that we're getting them the right product within cost, schedule, performance, because making sure that we stay within those parameters ensures that we can continue to give Marines year after year the right product. And I want to caution against the metrics here, right? The right product. What is the right product? The right product is what Lieutenant Colonel Kulitz needs when he needs it. And getting it to him fast enough so that he can train his Marines to employ it wherever they're going to be asked to employ that gear. So with innovation, right? It's it just again it comes back down to culture. It comes back to relationships, right? Because my relationship with Mel, right, makes a difference between how fast I get him that request to do an above the threshold reprogramming, right? That could support that innovation that's coming down the pipeline, right? So I'll pass it back down to Colonel Kulitz.
Okay, you want to say something on that, or can I go to questions?
So I'll say one thing.
There you go.
This idea with so I don't need gear for 2030 right now. I don't need it. In fact, I don't want it, because that means I have to account for it and maintain it. What I care very much about is, I just took command in June, and one of the first things I told the Marines of the battalion is we are a battalion of intelligence Marines and sailors. We got a couple sailors, no big deal. But they're fantastic humans because they come from a whole different upbringing, which is great.
Diversity. We're just talking about diversity. I think Dr. Carlin talked about diversity.
You're welcome.
All about diversity.
We even have officers and enlisted in my battalion. Super interesting. More diversities. But here's what I'll say. In order for us to support a deployment in 2023, we need to make sure we have the information to do the deliberate planning and the deliberate training in 2022, which means if my battalion has a collections apparatus to go out and sense the battle space, I need to train them in 2021. So I'm looking at a 12 to 18 to 24 month thing. So if you kick me gear and I get to train with it for 12 months, and then I get to employ it for 12 months while the unit that's going to then employ it on deployment is planning with the outputs of that, I'm a happy camper. But that's still really tough to do.
That sounds like an interesting point. Oftentimes we hear, hey, I didn't have the right equipment or whatever. Well, I've got to train them on that equipment. So I can't just deliver stuff and then the Marines intuit how to use that. I mean, it's not the iPhone. And I'm sorry, Tim Cook, that we're taking away from your iPhone watch launch today because everybody's tuned into this. So sorry, Tim. There you go. Yeah, one person. Troy. There you go. That's why I love Troy. So, right. So you've got all these things. You got to train your Marines. You got to get them ready. You got to get them ready to go into battle. On top of that, you've got to do everything else like the PFT, the pull-ups, the CRT, the field days. Where's my Marine? The field days, right, Marines? Right on. Okay. We got to be prepared, right? The Category 1 dental. Make sure they've got all their shot records, since that's a big thing. But other shots, beyond just what's going on in today's news. So yeah, there's a lot to do and get that out there. And then it's up to when you use the warfare centers like Crane, who couldn't be here with us today, a terrible family emergency. But then we've got NavalX LANT that you use, and I think maybe a NavalX pack in there a little bit too, right, sir? Yeah. So. And McWill, General Watson's folks, yeah. So I mean, there's just a lot of moving parts.
So
it's,
throw in .MLPF, right?
Yeah,
You know,
okay,
the
there you
acronym,
go.
doctrine, organization, training, material, which we're focusing on a lot here, personnel. You got policies, facilities, all that have to be considered in. TCOM is another critical member of our who do I interact with, making a capability. At the end of the day, the comment says all that technology is great, but it comes down to the individual Marines.
yeah, the Marine Corps Intel schools
Are
have
we
to.
training them now? I went down to Marine Corps Intel schools and briefed them on the Commandant's vision for a future of highly automated, risk-worthy, small, numerous capabilities and sensors all over the battlefield. And the lieutenants are like, sir, how am I going to handle all that? It's like, don't worry, you'll get there. We're going to train you over the next 10 years, and it'll come naturally to you. We will all evolve with this together. But training is another critical piece of it.
Hey, Rodriguez gets, is that fourth mic up and working? Maybe, maybe not. All right, whoever has a question, all right, so we're going to need Lieutenant Colonel, or Colonel, thanks. So let's get that over to Rodriguez.
That was easy.
No, not yet. Oh, we have an online question. So let's get that. Hey, Underwood, grab the mic from her, please. All right, there you go. Semper Fi. All right. Oh, I didn't remember. That's a long question. So here's the question. We're going to do an online question, then we'll turn to the audience here, and we'll get you next. So Underwood, it's going to be this gentleman here
Our
at the
teleprompter's not
the
working.
top. All right, good. All right, so we've got the question for the panel. What happens when the bottom-up warfighter requirement needs further development from a command support agency? I'm thinking medical and logistics needs that have to be solved by DHA and DLA, Defense Logistics, I don't know who HA is, but Defense Logistics Agency, who in turn develop their own requirement, often from top-down strategic documents mentioned earlier. How are these warfighter DoD planning requirements aligned, or does it just become an issue of that's their problem? So if you can't, that's a long question. So if you need to,
But it's a long question, but the requirements have to be able to map back to the planning guidance that we've been given. We have to be able to justify that both to Congress and to the executive branch that we're following their guidance and we're investing our money and going after capabilities that are in accordance with that. So I think the interaction works pretty well even with the top-down guidance. It's kind of where we're at with force design right now. There's top-down innovation going on, but we're also getting bottom-up refinement to that.
Right, and I would kind of flip that on its head a little bit, right? And think about what would happen if it was static, right? If you had, something consistently happening from the bottom up and from the top down. What are you not getting, Steve? Yeah. You're not getting innovation, right? And it takes that friction, I think, that friction where, hey, there's strategic alignment. From the top down, you have the warfighter needs from the bottom up, the Marine needs from the bottom up. There's friction, right? And that friction generates heat, and that heat generates innovation, right? In ways that we can get after the problem, that emergent problem set, an old problem set. But again, it's about relationships and about credibility.
So let's go back to Tom for a minute, Lieutenant Colonel Kulitz. So we talk about this innovation and the Lance Corporal in the fighting hole and all this kind of good stuff, right? So you're one of your Marines, and I know you came from First MiG. When Colonel Rideout was there, now he's doing something with the General or something. I don't know what he's doing. But he had the Pete Ellis Innovation Space. So talk just real quick on that so we can get to this other question. But talk to like whatever an Intel battalion falls under the MiG, yeah? So how did that kind of innovation or neat ideas get up to Colonel Rao or over to Lieutenant Colonel Bain for actual prosecution of putting into a program of record? Is there such a thing or path for that, or is that just more fairy dust we talk about?
So I think the path is where you want it to be, and the path is what you make of it. So the example here is a warfighter problem that needs to get sourced. If I read the same sourcing documents that the money guys are and the requirements folks are reading, then I can put it in the right language. And if I have a question, all I have to do is email and say, hey, does this smell about right? And then they can give me guidance. Now, if I just shoot an arty round and hope that it's going to hit my target without aiming, shame on me. So why would I send a requirement up without doing the same? So to me, this is very much an argument of when I wanted to convince my parents to go somewhere, let's make it in their best interest to take me somewhere, right?
All right. So Colonel Rao, we met when you were three MEFs G2. Same question goes to you. And then I'm sorry, sir, I lied, and I'll get to you. But I want to give you that same. Now you're in the catbird seat for making it happen for the Lance Corporal. We always talk about the Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps. I don't know why, but we always talk about the Lance. So you're in the seat for doing that. How did you change from the G2 with all of the Okinawan Intel Marine? Now you're in the seat to help everybody. What's been your major change to really help your brethren out there like Lieutenant Colonel Kulitz over?
Well, I think it's going back to understand the process and how to play the system back here to optimize, to support the forward edge. So this all begins. Are we going to have a set of podcasts in the future? We're talking about a series, because I think this is the beginning of a conversation. And
so the Marines,
innovation pipeline that you have, we need to sit down and explain that in terms of JSIDs, because they actually parallel pretty well. But what I get from First Intel Battalion or First MiG or from the fleet is input to our ConOps, a concept of operations. Hey, what do we think we need to be doing in the future? And that begins the JSIDS process. That's a foundational document that builds on a capabilities-based assessment. We start to flesh that out. From that, we build our gaps. This is another one of your questions, right? From that, we identify the gaps. And then we look for, okay, we've got some areas here that we currently cannot address. We develop requirements that give us guidance on, okay, that's kind of how we might go after it. And then we get the innovation going on, analysis of alternatives. What are some specific solutions I can find to fill that requirement to address that gap? And then we go through the whole JSIDS process to bring something and deliver it. We could harvest that out of S&T at the lab. We could get it direct from R&D that Marcor Syscom is doing from the industrial base as well, and start to deliver that out to the fleet, typically at low rate. I think where we take risk and right now capacity to build a capability that we can demonstrate that the future Marine Corps has a place in the defense planning guidance and the national defense strategy in the future, that we have a high value proposition with them. And we're looking at demonstrating that with capabilities. And so Marcor Syscom will help get that out to the fleet, to select units, to begin very shortly some of those demonstrations as well.
So as you've gone on, and I carped about earlier on, like, what did I say the rhetoric was? That the process is too difficult, and it's about the people. The people make the change. Could we say the people here, you all, are making that change to utilize the tools, the process to your advantage, to help folks out? Like, I'm going to point to Lieutenant Colonel Kulitz again, to help Tom's Marines out. I mean, is it really doing that? And then Underwood, give the mic over to him so I know to go over to this gentleman here, and I apologize again. But is that really happening? Like, do you see that ecology to where you're getting your needs?
Yes. Is it always so here we go. Is it always as fast as I want it to be? No. Is it sometimes a thing that I didn't even know that was out there, but now they're magically fielding it to us? Yes. Right. And so we were talking before this about some gear that the battalion is going to be using in the near future. And maybe we're testing it for a thing that it wasn't originally going to do, but we realized that there's a better way to use it. Awesome. Fantastic. That's the hope of this working the way that it does, because we can share that information. And then through the after action, we push back and say, hey, the thing you sent it out here to test for, it didn't really work that well, but you know what it really did? These three things over here. So just my 2 cents, recommend somebody else test it out as well to see if it matches. But are we getting what we need? For sure. Would we love more of it? Yeah, of course. But this is a Marine Corps thing or Department of Defense thing. Are we going to miss mission? Absolutely not. To Colonel Rao's point, like, we will find a way. Full stop.
So I think 3M made masking tape. It was for something else, and then somebody wanted to use it for something else. All right, sir, why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself very quickly and throw your question.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ed Silva, I'm with TMG Core. Thank you to the panel for being here. My question is about, I want to partner up with the Marine Corps, not just as a former Marine myself, but looking at capabilities I do believe the Marine Corps could use. I'm with a new technology company that has a new technology, and we're working with the Air Force right now because they have a program where they can do research and development at the 06 level. So basically, you have a requirement, I want to meet that requirement. I don't believe that we have such a thing in the Marine Corps, but if I wanted to partner up with you, Alicia, do I have to go through you basically to initiate the relationship to say, hey, we can get research and development through this other agency? It's not coming out from the operational forces, but I want to be able to show off, not show off, but have you test and evaluate my new technology, because I have something I believe is useful, but I need it to be tested.
So you got stuff as an industry member. You got technology, and you want to apply your wares at the. And we get a lot of this too, panel, right? It seems like the small businesses want to target this most senior rank, the hippo in the room, right? And they want to go to that highest person, the highest person with the opinion wins kind of thing, and talk with that person. I need to talk to the admiral because the admiral. Right. But Alicia, why? I mean, you've done non-lethal. You've been in this business a long time, working with the businesses that were really clamoring to get to non-lethal, because that at one time was super. It still is. I shouldn't say that. I apologize. But super important, right? And how did you handle that? And how have you taken those lessons over to possibly give some guidance here?
So I think the answer is there's lots of different ways to insert into this ecosystem. For PM Intelligence and even on behalf of NIWC, I'm a great starting point. I can be that initial filter to say, okay, help me understand the capability that you have. I can help you to identify those programs of record, emerging requirements where the capability that you have might apply, and start to connect you to the right people. Not dislike what NavalX does. I'm sort of like a one-man band NavalX just for PM Intel. You can kind of look at me like that. I'm trying to make those connections, put the people with the really great ideas, the smart folks together with those that have the requirements and the need to acquire capabilities for the Marine Corps. So I said, yes, I'm a great starting point, but I'm by no means the one and only touch point that exists.
Alicia, I'm going to break protocol according to Harvard Business Review of how to moderate a panel and help you with an answer. So that's one of the reasons Secretary Gertz and now Secretary Stephanie has created these tech bridges. We heard Whitney talk about them. I think we have a lot of, where's my tech bridge directors? Can they raise, they're out there too. They're also famous. And then each little red dot on this map indicates, they're very small, indicates a tech bridge. So, you know, it is hard, Alicia, right? Like, how do I know to go see you? Like, are you on LinkedIn and I see you? Or should I start somewhere here where there's a lower barrier of entry, and then they just happen to run into Steve Frail at the Palmetto Tech Bridge, or Rick Tarr at the Southern Maryland Tech Bridge, and they're really the broker of knowing where to go. But if they weren't using the tech bridge process here, like, how would they know how to get to you or Colonel? Like would they just look you up on the Marine Corps website and look for you? Or anybody, not just you, Alicia. I'm putting you on the spot only because I know you can probably answer this, but anybody.
Well, so it's actually pretty simple, right? If you want to do business with Marine Corps Systems Command, go to Marine Corps Systems Command website, and there's a link, there's a drop down that says, how do you do business with us? And it'll simply tell you, like, hey, how to get in touch with that, how to get in touch with our small business director of small businesses. He can get you right into the pipeline. But I think there's also kind of a larger context here, right? Which is when we talk about the ecosystem, one of the fantastic things that I really love about acquisitions and in the Marine Corps and in the U.S., right, is our industry partners are key to innovation, are key to that ecosystem. And so you're 100% right. We've got to get you plugged in, and we've got to make sure you know how to get there. As a matter of fact, talk to us after this, and we'll tell you how to do it. Okay.
So we've got so Mel, you brought up our Congress, right? You brought up both the House and Senate. So we've got those folks out there. They have passed some federal laws for us under U.S. Title Code I guess it's what, 15, I don't know, 2370. I don't know all of them, but there's title code out there that allows us to do non-FAR-based strategies. So I'm talking OTAs, I'm talking those things. So how do you all look at those? Are those super powerful? Like the PIA, that's how we're here at this innovation space, is through a partnership intermarriage agreement. If we didn't have that, we probably wouldn't be having something as wonderful as this. It'd be much more difficult. But how do you see that Mel, with the using those federal authorities, those authorizations given to us to really expand and I would say fail with R&D money through OTAs and so forth, if you will?
So what comes to mind is the rapid acquisition authority that we now have. Just came to fruition, I guess, about 2-3 years ago, where we take O&M, and what Congress does allow for us to do with this is we can use O&M as R&D.
You all better be writing notes right now. Mel's selling his secrets here.
So, but here's the thing, is that because technology is advancing so fast, so Congress has said, hey, we're going to give you X amount of dollars to go do that rapid technology. You go do it. Now, when it becomes a program of record, you have to then program it to its correct appropriation. That's a huge advantage, because you got to think back, how long does it take? Technology today can't follow the typical acquisition process. You're running in mud. You just can't get there. So now what we have is an opportunity now to use our O&M, all the services, to use O&M to advance technology, get it started, get it invested, and this is during year of execution. Year of execution. Now you're able to, once you get that technology, then when you begin to make it a program of record, you program the R&D, you program the PMC, you program the O&M for sustainment. This helps you to stay advanced, stay ahead of this rapid acquisition process in terms of trying to sustain your IT, trying to sustain, trying to develop a new technology. So that's one of the advantages that we have with that particular authority. Do a lot of the services use it? Some are using it far better than others, but it's there. So they have moved, Congress, from their perspective, have kind of moved that obstacle aside to allow the department to move forward on that new technology. They recognize that, hey, technology today can't follow the typical acquisition process in its infancy. They understand that. And so they're leveraging that new technology in terms of, appropriation in terms of how to help us get through it. Now, it's not new money. It's not additional money. It's just an opportunity to execute the current dollars that you have.
I'm so glad I called you and you got my email out of your junk box. I'm so glad that we had that. It's really nice to have you here and talk about these different things that are sometimes very difficult for us all to navigate, especially acquisition professionals. I mean, we don't know all the answers, and these kinds of collision events are super important. And I, when I say take a note on what you just said, oh my goodness, that's a great note to take. I would ask maybe either Lieutenant Colonel Bain or Colonel Rao, like, have you seen any of this money, or just talk to me about how you do rapid prototyping at your level, and maybe it's yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, so actually, yeah, Mel, as you know, we are using rapid prototyping to get after some of our EW electronic warfare problem sets inside the program office and for the Marine Corps. What that allows us to do is, as you look at middle tier acquisition, but it allows you to tap into other things, right? Like OTA consortiums. It allows you to tap into a lot of other avenues, and that you could leverage the outcomes from, like technology deployment agreements, future naval capabilities, things that you could bring out of that are super low TRL level, plug into the process, or get a contract, a creative contracting vehicle that you could put it through rapid prototyping.
I said I wasn't going to ask any stump the chump questions,
yeah,
but
go ahead.
have you used any OTA consortiums for your portfolio?
Absolutely.
Can you name one? And if not, I can help you. I'm willing to do that for you.
Identity intelligence. All right.
Go ahead, sir.
Actually, Identity Intelligence is an OTA that's currently being run through the Identity Operations Program that is really seeking to provide a transformative identity capability. And when I say identity operations, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about biometrics. And when I say biometrics, I'm talking about fingerprints, irises, face, but provide that in a form factor that makes sense for how Marines are going to need to use it in the future, right? So ways that I can hone in on a singular biometric that Marines can collect passively, right? And then using things like automation, like Colonel Rao was talking about, cloud technologies to provide information at the tactical edge. That's what these are about. That's what these OTAs are all about. I'll hand it over to Alicia. She can talk about all the TDAs, the FNCs, the other OTAs that we have, and actually using an OTA right now, in a rapid prototyping scenario for electronic warfare. Right. So when you start, and we only could do that because of relationships that we have, right? The relationships that we have between each other and creating credibility to be able to layer these processes on top of each other to hopefully get capability out to the warfighter faster.
And Alicia, as the ATI, have you been able to help out the colonels or lieutenant colonels, team leads in PMIS to understand what an OTA is, what a consortium is, what an FNC is, a future naval capability, I think, from ONR. Like, what are how do you educate the proletariat troglodyte kind of acquisitions professionals that don't know all this stuff? Can you talk about how you're doing that with them? And then let's find a next question out there. So Marines, can you find somebody who's willing to have the next question?
Sure. So that's something I do on a regular basis. As new individuals come aboard, sit down with them and talk to them about what I do as an advanced technology integrator, what the S&T opportunities, or if you will, R&D pots of money that are out there that they can reach into, the contracting vehicles and capabilities like OTAs, for example, the IWRP out of the Naval Information Warfare Center. So that's the Information Warfare Research Program project, close enough. So that's just one of them. There's a couple of in-house Marine Corps OTAs that we've put in place, like Lieutenant Colonel Bain talked about, to get some of our SIGINT and EW capabilities. But again, beyond OTAs, getting back to something we've heard quite a few times here, is relationships. So for example, with the Office of Naval Research, we actually have 3 ongoing future naval capability programs. That's a lot for one program office, a lot, because those are high dollar, relatively high risk, but maturing capabilities with a lot of promise for transition to programs of record. So those are things that, with the concurrence from DCI and CD&I that we've been able to invest in to bring to fruition. So our partnership with ONR is very important. I and multiple folks throughout PM Intel sit on a number of joint working groups looking to understand what the other services are doing. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. Especially given limited resources. It's to our advantage to leverage what's already been developed, but what we can grab off the shelf for those near-term solutions, particularly, working with the soft community, because they fail faster and they do it really well. And so we want to learn from their capabilities. So beyond that, strengthening our partnerships through NavalX, and the SBIR program we already talked about, Naval Innovative Science and Engineering, the NICE 219 program. That's another source that, though it's not directly related to programs of record, we can certainly inform and leverage the investments that
You got a couple of tech
Warfare
transitions
Centers.
down there at NavalX, land of
Absolutely.
the NICE, right, into DCGS Marine Corps. So yeah, that's all good and working. It sounds like we're doing good. So I'm going to go to you, and then a question up on the board, and then I think over to this gentleman here next. So why don't we go to you, sir, with your question?
Thanks, Steve.
I don't know. Is the green light on?
Yes.
Okay.
Dan Williams from Dahlia. I want to go back to the bottom-up approach for requirement generation. Is there a simple answer for how do you do that? How do you get what the soldier needs up to the point of...
We're not sure about soldiers. It's the red flag over there. Marine Corps.
sorry.
There you go. Okay. I'm sorry. I know you sell to the Army.
And then really my bigger question is, what are the biggest challenges? Where is it either broken, or what would you do to fix it if you had the power?
So the fastest way for me to put an urgent need is through an urgent needs request or an urgent needs statement. Done. Put it in paper, send it up. Even faster than that is calling the relationships and saying, hey, does this exist, before I start writing anything down? Right, so there's, and right in the middle of those two things is going to the Pete Ellis Innovation Node at the MIG, who is the deputy or the co-tech bridge director for SoCal, and saying, hey, do you have any industry partners that are already looking at this? So being a Southern California unit, I'm blessed with a whole bunch of different avenues to get after this problem. But this is one of those where there's a will, there's a way. Is it broken? It depends on what time horizon you're looking on.
I'll give you a quick. Yeah. Here's a specific example. Master Gunner Sergeant Comerica is going to have a community of practice, VTC, where all the fleet is invited, all the GeoInt analysts are invited to participate, and others that have an interest in the GeoInt capabilities. It's at those forums. We brief out some of the capabilities, things we're working on, initiatives and projects that are ongoing, and then the fleet is giving us immediate feedback. The other way is the FSRs sitting down there at the keyboard with the users, finding out, okay, what do you really need this to do for you? And helping them figure out how to do it, that it may already be there, or provide the feedback up to the developer over at Marcorps Syscom to make that happen.
So when you talk about these FSRs, you've mentioned them a couple times. Maybe it's just you, but maybe both of you, Tom, Matt. Who are these FSRs? Like, what does even FSR stand for? I don't even know. Like, what do they do down there for you? And then Mel, I think you wanted to have a comment here, maybe on the urgent uns of, like, that's more shell game money, right? But Lieutenant Colonel Bain, what is an FSR, and how could the FSR help that Lance Corporal? What the question for the gentleman here from the front, like, move that up? What is that?
Absolutely. So FSR, simply field support representative, and so that the purpose of that field support representative is to work hand in hand, to be a subject matter expert, work hand in hand with that Marine at the deck plate level, right, to troubleshoot and problem solve and help the Marine get the most out of the capability, but also at a kind of a larger level, when you pull out from a sustainment standpoint, right, I'm ensuring long-term performance, like availability, maintainability, right? I'm trying to reach those performance key, those key performance parameters that Colonel Rouse has set out for us. So at the deck plate level, at the larger level, but there's also probably like a much, a larger level too that I'll let Mel get after, which is, hey, how do you take those deck plate requirements, right, in program form? How do you get after that, right? Kind of in the law, or how do you create flexibility? Yeah.
So I've been thinking to answer your question, and we're gonna work our way up the chain here. So Marines have training; they go through training, they prepare. There are after-action reports that come from those training evolutions. Those after-action reports are then rolled in by command, and those commands also participate in what we are kind of doing this week is OAGs, Operation Assessment Groups. They're talking to they're talking to the capability program managers. They're telling them exactly what we can and cannot do, what we need, how we need it, when we need it. I think that's a critical link. The FSRs all tie into that as well, but they bring the entire community together at the headquarters to talk through those problems, to talk through those. That's where the Lance Corporal voice is working its way back up. the commanders come to talk. They're bringing their Marines' voices to the table to say, hey, here's what I need. CDI also does I think the MEF, where they meet with the Mark 4 commanders. They also get opportunity above and beyond the OAGs to talk and say, hey, here's what I need. Here's how we see things. Here's what's changing on the horizon. All of that input is coming up and bubbling up. So now you have an opportunity, the convergence is all happening. Oftentimes that's a deliberate planning. Then you have the immediate requirement, we need this today. Now you got the urgent needs statement that's coming up, is bypassing all of that. It's coming to SysCom. SysCom is going to say what they do. They move money around in turn and to try to address the immediate requirement. That requirement is kicked over to the planners for long-term planning. SysCom is only going to address it for the immediate term, maybe 1 to 2 years, maybe 3 years for the purchase it and then the sustainment. They're not going to go beyond that. It needs to be made into a program of record. That's where it's going to compete against the POM. Is this requirement just as important as all the other 959 lines of information? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just a one-time thing that kind of solves the problem today, but not tomorrow. So it dies on a grapevine.
So Mel, you're saying what I just heard, some of what you said in there is, the last part caught me, was, does everything have to become a program of record? I get that all the time. I hear that, like, small businesses, and we got to make this a program of record. I'm like, dude, I don't know what you're going to make that a program of record for, because so talk a little bit about that with Colonel Rao. Like, does everything have to become a program of record, or can we put it into a program of record as a small R or a big R requirement?
Nail on the head. Everything is not a program of record. And some things, because of the advancing of technology or the immediate need requirement, there is already a long-term solution being developed. It may be an interim solution that's being resourced right now. So that interim solution is just what it is. This interim solution is going to die. It will never become a program of record, but it may be a lead into a program of record. It may be an advancement going towards a program of record, but in and of itself is not a program of record. So that's determined by the Capabilities Requirements Directorate. Okay. They will determine if it's a long-term enduring requirement or if it's a short-term interim solution based on the vision, based on the requirements, based on the development, based on the technology that's being advanced. So much more goes into the decision to make it a program of record, but it is definitely, you got to think through, is it enduring? If you can answer that question, if this is an enduring requirement, meaning that this is something that meets a gap,
well,
it closes a gap.
Mel, come on, where are the gaps? Like, here's where I'm going to get a little froggy. I'm going to say, where are the gaps? Y'all don't give the gaps in distro A to anybody. There's no gaps to where I can walk into a tech bridge and go, oh, here's all my distro A gaps, and I can go answer this. Because I think that's what this question is up here from our gentleman from the screen, is like, if I have a high TRL, technical readiness review level, readiness level, if I have a high TRL, how do I get it into something? I know that for industry, and even working with some of the warfare centers, there is no way to get like a list of the gaps or what even the requirements are. There's no distro A of it yet. So again, how do we get industry, academia to really know? How do we get industry with your industry, right, sir? Yeah, you got IRAD funds, maybe, or somebody's got IRAD funds. Somebody got money to do experimentation with, right? And I forget what IRAD stands for, so maybe Alicia can help me out later. But these internal investment funds for companies to understand where we're going and what our gaps are. Where are those? So any of you take an answer to that, and I think that'll help answer this TechBridge member, that they have a high TRL, they're ready to put technology into the Marine's hands or the sailor's hand. What's going on? How do I know?
I'm going to have to go back to Alicia's assertion that it's all about relationships, because the gaps are classified. Probably not distribution A for where we have areas that we have seams right now. so that our adversaries can't exploit them.
Got to be some
So-
of those, sir, that we can.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can-
So it's the engagement across all of us with industry and developers and innovators to for us to tease out. You've got something, and I've got a gap for it.
Am I hearing it right? Is that what our industry base, our tech bridges should be asking the requirements folks for up at N9 and at CDD for is like, hey, give me distro A gaps that we can at least put out there for thought. So Mel, Lieutenant Colonel.
What I'm about to tell you is the secret to be able to look and really understand. Don't chase gaps. Don't. What you want to chase is, what are the services investing in? Let me repeat, what are the services investing in? And you have a document that's produced every year by Congress that tells you where the services are putting their money. It's called the Appropriation Act. Yes, it's a document about yay thick, and it breaks down all the services. Breaks down every single investment dollar, breaks down, that's your PMC, your RDT&E, and it breaks it down by major program. They're telling you where the services are investing. Read what you will, read between the lines. If a service is investing in something, if it's a new technology, what does that tell you? Potential gap, yes, or potential modernization is going on. That's a trigger. Now, where do you go to look? You go to look at all the RFPs, requests for information, requests for proposals. That's where you begin to look in the services database to see where they're starting to invest. That's one way of being able to tap into how the services are now chasing new technology or trying to invest in new technology. So that's produced every year. It's on the net. It's telling you. So that's just one avenue of approach to kind of get an insight in terms of, how all this $732 billion annually is being spent. So just a little insight.
So there are two things. We got to read, and then maybe we need to do collaboration with some of these folks here at the Tech Bridge level, which is what Secretary Gertz, when he created SoftWorks down in Tampa for when he was AT&L down there, he wanted to do the same thing while he was with the Navy as RDA, and now all of them belong to Secretary Stephanie. So I'm hearing that. Well, I was going to go to one more question, but I think can we do one more question? Let's do. Where's that gentleman that had a question? We're going to do one more question. So, Rodriguez, and don't give me the time chart because I went at 10:45. I gave him 15-minute break. So.
Hi, my name is Reed McAllister. I'm co-lead to the UVAS working group. It's Unmanned Vehicle and Autonomous Systems Working Group. And it's a consortia across all of DoD. And one of the efforts that we're working on is started back in September 2015. So we're about to have our 6th anniversary. So we started about 20 people on this UVAS coalition of the willing within the NAVC structure. We're now over 2,400 people DoD wide. And one of the efforts that we're starting right now is with what I'm calling whole of nation approach to unmanned systems. The fundamental problem is that government holds a Heisman to industry and also to academia, and they don't allow them to come in and take a look at the warfighting priorities that we have. Yes, they're classified. There are 373 of them. What we're trying to do is a 3-prong approach across industry, academia, and the government labs. Is one, connectivity is pillar number one. How do we connect their labs, their modeling and simulation capabilities within academia, within industry, with the modeling and simulation capabilities that we have within the government construct? And how do we draw that together? When you look at our adversaries have a unified body of their industry, their academia, and their government structure. We don't have that, and that's what we're competing against. So this whole nation approach, I brought in N9I Bravo, I brought in Senior Vice President DAU, I brought in the president of NPS to start breaking through that. And then the linchpin was, how do you reach industry at scale? So we brought in AUVSI. AUVSI is now on board with this. They have the Maritime Advisory Committee. So Marie Bussier is our LVC person within the government construct. She's going to help us start drawing the SDREN and DREN connectivity across that ring in order for us to start sharing those 373 warfighting capabilities. So when you look at the GAO report that was just put out last year, when you looked at the IRAD money, which is a $5 to $6 billion annual money that is being spent in industry, when you looked at the 10 warfighting priorities in DoD, there was a total mismatch. If you looked at autonomy, maybe 5% of the IRAD money that was being spent in industry aligned to DoD's warfighting priorities. If you looked at, let's say, AI, maybe 7%. If you looked at cyber, maybe 7%. So they're very low hits. So they don't know what our warfighting priorities are. Therefore, if we articulated them and gave them access to the 373 warfighting priorities, maybe we could get more bang for the buck out of industry and getting towards warfighting priorities. So connectivity is one of the pillars that we're getting after. We have a weekly, every 2 weeks we meet, and we're drumming at this. The second pillar is standards.
This is where I become a terrible moderator. Is this an infomercial for?
No. This is what we're doing.
But what's the question for the panel? Because
no, there's no question.
Oh, okay. So let me help
the
you.
answer. So the answer is, in my portfolio, I also have artificial intelligence, autonomy, in my portfolio. So any questions on that? We're part of the Joint Robotics and Autonomous Systems Enterprise. With N9I, work with Craig Sawyer and the crew and his guys there, and we work under the the Unmanned Campaign Plan and pathway that the Commandant and the CNO have put together.
Right, but industry doesn't have visibility into that. And what we're trying to do is build the bridge so they have visibility into that. So when they make an investment, they're answering your problem and they can start getting
There's
after
some
it.
incredible insights through the UARCs and the FRDCs as well.
Yes, and they're part of this effort.
So that's I think we're seeing the same. Well, we weren't at first, but we do. Like I was peppering Mel about how and the Colonel, like, how do we get distro A capability gaps out there? How do we do that? And I think that's what you're doing with your group.
Going straight
so
to
industry base knows where to invest their IRAD and help us out. Now, look, I got done reading 2 books, Kill Chain and 2034.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what you just said about our near peer and our peer adversaries about they're like industry, academia, and the government are all tied together. But this is America,
choice.
right? This is America. We're different, which is a good thing. It's a good thing because we're imaginative, number one.
Yeah.
I know we're imaginative, and we have a different.
Yeah, 100%, Steve. I'll take. I'll take your. Structured economies, your socialized economy, and I'll raise you America. I'll raise it because it's going to win. Hey, listen, have we had a hard time along the way? Absolutely, we have. But those struggles and those obstacles have made us better, both internally inside the DoD, our relationship with industry. Hey, we can always get better. We can always get better at forming those bonds with industry because that bond with industry is critical.
And I think our gentleman here has set the bar for y'all to allow that, to think about how can we get distro A, which means releasable to the public, kind of requirements out there. I'd also say in this conversation what I heard was model system-based engineering, which I know we don't do on some of our systems, but we need to put the investment into that, Mel, so we can better understand what they're doing up. If you ever get to go to the war room where Craig Sawyer, N9I works, you can see this great, it's secret, no foreign, so you have to have clearance to get, but you can see all this, like how it all works. And what if something happened to something, if we pulled it out? Well, right now, like sometimes we don't know because we're not doing model-based systems engineering. We're getting better at that. Now, I would put us.
So we're doing more of that. More requirements are getting justified based on experimentation, modeling, and simulation. So we can show good pedigree and justify that requirement because we've demonstrated it, either in wargaming or in modeling and simulation. I would end on an up note, though, is that, and this is from one of the deans at Carnegie Mellon, visited a couple weeks ago, Marcel Herbert, who I asked, are we keeping up with our pacing threats? Are we? And his response was, they incrementally improve on what we already do, but we have the advantage when it comes to original ideas, like no one else has.
Nation. That's where it all is. I mean, the imagination of each Marine and sailor to be imaginative about what they would like to see, what each Don workforce member can be imaginative about what they'd like to see for their war, the warfighter that they're supporting. So that's one of the great things that we have, is the ability to imagine and the left and right lateral limits from senior leaders like yourselves to allow that to happen and be imaginative. So it sounds to me like you've got a great ecology working. You're doing, now you are, Intel is a small community, but you're trying really hard to bring that imagination in and make things work faster and better, and having that collision space. I think each of you have talked about collisions with each other, and then bringing it home with different folks around our warfare centers. We've got one of the richest warfare centers, I think, in the DoD compared to the Air Force and the Army. So it looks like you're doing that, and I hope you stick around for a little bit after this. It's gotten a little bit cooler in here. We're going to have lunch soon. I think I'm keeping everybody from lunch. Yes, I'm getting the
Lunch
head
is
nods.
ready.
Lunch is ready. There's Whitney. Couldn't keep it a secret. So I really appreciate each of the members being here. I appreciate the audience. I appreciate our social media audience, our virtual audience. So thank each of you for being here. Let's give a great round of applause to our members. Ashley, or do I just go lunch is served?
All right, off.